Pittsfield, New Hampshire, and quite a few other community systems. Amherst is another example. Another part of our business that where I spend most of my time, I'm president of Pennachuck Water Service Company. Spend a great deal of time talking to communities about not so much us owning the system, but doing a public-private partnerships, we call them. We have the ability to come in and help a community using our resource base, both from whether it's human resources or even financial resources, to help get the water system where you want it to be without us owning the system. In today's day and age, the concept of an investor-owned or privately owned water company is lost popularity for sure. But we still have, we've been operating for 153 years. We've got tremendous pool of talent, engineering resources, managerial people, operating staff. We've got financial resources. So example is the town of Hudson, New Hampshire, where the town owns the water system, but we are the town's operator. And we just renewed our contract with the town, and we've offered, they want to make some capital improvements, and one of the provisions in our new operating contract is that we can, using our own financing sources, do some of those capital improvements. I mean, obviously, we're going to look for a little longer term in the contract, and if the town terminated our operating agreement, we'd want to get paid off for whatever portion of those improvements that we hadn't recovered yet. But it gives the town the ability to go ahead and get some of these things done without, having to run it through the general fund or do a bond issue and some of the more challenging things. We find that water systems that are able to just focus on what they're doing and not, in towns we find this all the time where you're torn between improvements in schools and roads and the water system, and how do you allocate your capital resources, how do you get it all done? And oftentimes, because the water system's underground and can't be seen, it can tend to get let go. Anyway, we wanted to talk to you about Newmarket, what's coming up in the future. The Safe Drinking Water Act has made the water business very challenging for all of us. The systems we own and operate. In fact, in Nashville, we're renovating our treatment plant now. We built it in 1980. We finished it. It was just a little over $7 million, and it at the time was good for 20 million gallons a day. And it wasn't too many years after that we had to make some modifications to increase the throughput to 30 million gallons, but that was only probably $750,000. So here you have a little under $8 million total investment in a plant that's 20 years old, and because of regulatory changes, we're right in the middle, in fact, of upgrading our plant, and we're spending $25 million, 3 times the cost of the original plant. So we see this in many communities around, not just here in New Hampshire, but around the country, where what was okay 20 years ago just doesn't pass muster today, and it's really created some challenges for some of the communities. We don't see that the regulation's going to change much, and that it's just going to get more difficult as we go along. A little bit more about Pennachuck. We're an investor-owned company. We have about 3,000 shareholders. We're traded on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange. It's PNNW if you want to look us up. We have a website, pennachuck.com. You'll find that today we operate about 87 water systems we operate for other people. I think a good example right here is Wade Farm. It's a community water system. We don't own it. The homeowners own it. The community association owns it. But we're the certified operator. We've got a tremendous a talent pool of both water supply distribution people that we can take care of just about any water problem. And we're finding more and more where people want a certified operator that can take care of everything, not just do one piece of it and then they got to call somebody else to take care of some other aspects. So, our one-stop shopping is what we believe people are looking for. Anyway, I think as we go forward, we'd like to be talking with the town of Newmarket. We've got some pretty creative people, and as you are faced with how you're going to find more water, what you're going to do to get more water for the community, there's a whole array of options, and a lot of them are very expensive, and we try to find ways to meet the regulatory requirements, but to try and do it as economically as possible, because, capital's always a challenge to raise capital and finance these things. Bernie, do you want to add any comments?
I think that about covers it. I guess the only point is that Steve and I were just talking, as a matter of fact, we talked a number of times about Newmarket, and we're talking about it coming down this afternoon, is that we think Newmarket is a wonderful system, to be quite honest with you. There's issues with the treatment plant and water quality and volume, of course, but distribution-wise and overall, a very nice system. But we think that Pennachuck, with the talent pool that we have, our engineering abilities and treatment abilities, we think we could just put that over the edge, take care of the issues that are facing the community. Pennachuck has also done a substantial amount of homework, not only in surface water treatment in the community, the potential that Steve talked about with different treatment options, but we've also done quite a bit of homework on the potential for groundwater supplies in town, and that potential exists. And we would really be very pleased to talk to you about that, what we've uncovered, and either one of the options, either surface water or groundwater. So.
Administrator Dixon?
Yeah, you currently own and operate also the well system for
Shanda Farms, Great Bay, right? Yeah, that we acquired that a number of years ago. There were some operational challenges there. I think hopefully we've corrected those. Certainly don't have the phone ringing as much as it used to when we first took it over. I believe it's 88. Some of them are duplex and some of them are single family. And we have 2 wells that are, I think it's 2 or maybe 3 over there, but
Yeah, 3 now.
yeah, 3 that groundwater wells, drilled bedrock wells. We have out of the 50.
Good producers, or as far as gallons per minute, what do you?
Yeah, we have not had any serious problems over there. I mean, in almost every system with a drilled bedrock well, it depends on the climate. I mean, what's yielding 20 gallons a minute today can change to 2 gallons a minute when you've had 2 months of hot, dry weather, because the water table drops and you don't.
If you share with us what the ratings of the pumping capacity rating of the wells that you have there are.
Oh boy, I don't 10 gallons a minute.
That low.
Yeah, and well, I don't know if that's each. I know one of them's 10. I think we got one. They're not big producers.
They're
No.
6-inch rock holes, Mr. Dixon. They're not gravel wells like yours.
Mhm.
They're drilled wells. I want to say they're in the ballpark of 250, 300 feet deep. And like Steve says, they're probably 10 to 15 each with the 3 holes. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, we had a lightning strike on one of them. We lost the well pump.
The reason why I asked that, I had heard in the past that there were some pretty good producers there, and that was my opinion.
Not municipal scale, for sure. They're pretty good as a community system goes. We have some that we run, some community systems where we'll have 2 or 3 wells, and we might get 3 gallons a minute, and we need more storage, and those really struggle, especially in the summertime. And then we run like the town of Hudson has 3 gravel pack well systems, and their total capacity is about 2 million gallons a day in that system. I mean, I'd like to find one of those in every town, because it's a nice way to supply your community with drinking water.
I guess my question for you is knowing, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but knowing what you know about Newmarket, sounds like you guys know quite a bit. What is your thought process, and where would you start? What would your proposal be to start looking at if we were to engage in some sort of relationship?
Yeah. I think one of the things we would want to get our engineering staff, focused on what the alternatives are, to spend some time and do some field work here. When you start looking at treatment plants, first of all, I want to look, how much more water do you need? What do you have today? What are your growth projections? And how much do you need going forward? And do you need it all year long, or is it a peaking problem? And if it's a peaking problem, which it appears to be here, you got some really good wells that take care of the town most of the year. You've got a peaking problem today, and as the town grows, you may need more water for base average usage. I always like to start with the most practical solution. Is there another place to put in another well? Is there another opportunity for groundwater? Because groundwater doesn't cost as, you don't have the treatment costs. You know, when you start using surface water supplies, you've got all of the treatment that goes in. And the treatment is, it's coagulation, sedimentation, you're using chemistries, you're using filtration systems, very complex, and both from a capital and operating point of view tend to be your highest cost water. So I always like to start is, what's the opportunity for groundwater? Is there an opportunity in the town anywhere? Is there another place where you can acquire property or an easement, develop a well, tie it into the system? And it's not going to be cheap. I mean, capital cost for a new well supply today, especially for something in the order of 100 or 200 gallons a minute, is probably going to take, you know, two years and $100,000 just for permitting. But again, your capital costs will be lower, and you don't have the all the treatment issues. So that's, I guess, the first place we'd go and look. And then if that was exhausted, I'd even say, is there across the town boundary in the next town? Because one thing with Pennachuck is we don't limit our sphere to just the town boundary. If there's a great supply and it's between two towns, and maybe two towns can share it, maybe develop more of a regional approach. That has worked real well, especially in the Milford and Amherst area. There are interconnections now between those towns. There's a number of different groundwater supplies that we can use. And depending on circumstances, you can move water from one town to the other depending on where the demand is. So, you might want to look at a regional solution as another alternative. And then, of course, the other option is, if the others are exhausted, is, all right, you have to go to surface water. Where is the best supply that's going to be the most reliable, and how much do we really need? I mean, are you going to build a 10 million gallon a day treatment plant if you only need 500,000 gallons a day 10 years from now? I mean, there are ways to build modules, segments of these packaged treatment plants that will meet all the regulations. And you don't need to run it year-round, especially right now. I mean, your wells are adequate for all but a few months. What you need is the supplemental supply. So, that's the approach we take. We start with very practical. What's the most practical way to get the supply that you need? And then, of course, one of the other things we have to look at through the process is demand management. How's water being used now? What's the leakage look like? I mean, if you're pumping 1 million gallons and you're only metering 600,000, what's happened to the other 400,000 gallons? So in all the systems we operate, we try to make sure we've got metering on the production side and then good metering in all the usage areas, so we can compare that on a regular basis to make sure we're not losing a lot in leakage. And then ultimately, how are customers using the water? Are people running their sprinklers around the clock? We've seen some systems where people would come home from work Friday afternoon, throw the sprinkler on, and then go away for the weekend. And enough people do that, and I don't care what the system has for a supply. You're really pushing the limits of it. But, how are people using water? Is the use rational? If you see your peak is like 3 times your average day use, people are just using too much water for lawn watering, and there needs to be some reasonable use of that. I mean, it's not especially in a hot, dry summer, it's not a boundless resource. You've only got so much water, and if people want to just toss it on their lawn, you risk putting more important uses at risk, and you need to strike a balance. Maybe in a lot of our systems we run, we look at capacity, we look at the demand. Almost every groundwater system that we operate, because of the limits of the yield, either of the well or the aquifer, we put odd even day lawn watering in. So, if your home's an even number, you can water your lawn on an even numbered day. And of course, you always get a customer that says, well, what about months that have 31 days? Because the odd people get to water 2 days in a row. I haven't figured out the solution to that one yet, but you always have those challenges. But, you want to try and cut the use back to some extent. We find the hardest ones are where we say no lawn watering, and people have gardens and they take pride in their lawn or whatever, and it's a challenge. They're going to complain a lot if they can't water at all. So we try to look for, what can we allow, and then you've got the issue of enforcement. If you go to demand management and don't enforce it, you create an inherent unfairness. You got somebody across the street, and they'll always call you and say, hey, the guy across the street's watering his lawn, and mine's turned brown, and you better come out and do something. And if you don't, then they say, well, hey, this thing doesn't have any effect to it, so I'm going to water my lawn. And then you get more and more violations. You start chasing your tail with that kind of thing. Ideally, you want to be able to provide people some amount of water in the summer for outside use, whether it's filling the kids' pool or doing some watering flowers or a little water on the lawn. But to spend millions of dollars so that they can water 24 hours a day, 7 days a week just isn't economical. Doesn't make good sense either environmentally or economically. So I don't know if that helps or not, but that's kind of the process. You have to look at the whole picture.
Counselor Hart, did you have a question?
No, thank you.
Also, Administrator Dixon?
Yeah, just to give the council a little history, Pennachuck is one of 3 firms that responded to an RFP in 1999 when we were looking at taking the water treatment plant in Packers Falls out of the mothballs and putting it back online. So they're quite familiar. They spent quite a bit of time going through that, as did 2 other firms, going through our plant and looking at it and putting together a proposal. So they're quite familiar. But on top of that, they have kept in touch since that time as to how we're doing and kept abreast of it. So they have a pretty good idea of what we have in place, and certainly with our experience too in getting it back up and running, we have a pretty good idea too at this point, a better idea than what happened in 1990 when it was started and stopped. So they have kept a close rapport as to what was going on and have shared a number of different scenarios where there could be a public-private partnership. I have talked from time to time with Chairman Hart, former Chairman Hart, about the possibility of going public or with a public-private partnership. And in 1999, 2000, that was a direction I was really looking at us going in, but it just didn't work out. The quotes were quite high. There were a lot of unknowns as the result of having our plant offline for so long and everything. It turned out it was cheaper for us to get the startup process going to better define what we had there. But public-private partnerships do make a lot of sense, and they can be crafted in a number of ways.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from the council? None? Okay, well,
Well, again, thank you very much for having us over here today. We do appreciate it, and appreciate you taking the time.
either Al or myself will be in touch.
Okay,
All right?
great, thank you very much.
I
All right,
appreciate it.
have a good evening. Thank you.
I think you can stick around, gentlemen.
For breakfast?
Okay, next item on the agenda tonight is a public hearing to accept LWCF funds to approve $100,000 from the Land Water Conservation Fund in order to build athletic fields and trails on Packers Falls Road. Why don't you give a little brief summary of what you're gonna, then I'll open a public hearing then.
Sure.
All right.
One of the prerequisites for the Land Water Conservation Fund, before they would allow us to be able to continue the funding, was have an archaeological review. That occurred by Brian Velmont, New England Archaeological Company, LLC, out of Kennebunk, Maine. They concluded that there were no significant archaeological artifacts or anything there, no T-Rexes, no Indian artifacts or anything. So they have sent this on to the state. The state now has this in hand. Edna Finer from the Archaeological and Historic Preservation has this in hand, and the next step will be sending the packet to Washington to get approved, and then it will come back to you for approval for the $100,000. There are no other obstacles in the way now as far as the requirements that the town had to meet, as far as the archaeological review, the plan itself. Everything out now is now there. going again down to the Washington, and then when it comes back, they'll have to be signed. That's where we are. I probably imagine that it will probably be signed by, I would say, it would be in your hands by the first or second week of September. It'll be very quickly from here on in, and that's where we are right now.
Okay, and we don't actually have a true approved plan. We've seen a couple scenarios. I know you're going to talk about that later tonight.
That's correct.
But I just want to share with the public, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, that this money, if we don't approve a plan, goes back. This doesn't mean we absolutely are building the field and, you know, this is the final straw.
That's correct.
So for those in the audience that are here tonight to try to convince us not to, that's another item
That's right.
later on this evening.
Correct.
So this public hearing is whether or not we should accept the funds.
That's right.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Yep.
And I don't know if I stepped out there just for a minute, if Jim hit on it, but basically, too, to just remove any doubt, the grant is site-specific. It's not movable.
Right, it can't be
Okay.
used anyplace else in town. It either is used here or it's not.
Right, and right now, I did talk to the Land Water Conservation Fund. It looks as though any funding that would be as significant as 100,000 probably won't be for another 4 or 5, maybe even 7 years. Maybe there'll be funding for $20,000 projects, but no $100,000 projects, because it was significantly cut. And it will be limping along at best for the next 2 or 3 years as we try to move in that direction to get it back online. It's not dead, but it's not very healthy.
Yeah, okay. One thing, just some administrative stuff. I meant to say in the beginning that Counselor Glennon is excused tonight. He's out of town training for work. So I just wanted to make that statement. I apologize I didn't do that at the beginning of the meeting. Okay, thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
And Al, did you want to say something again before I open the public hearing? Your light's on.
No, I just thought it was important to emphasize that the grant funds are site-specific. We don't have a choice of changing locations once we file the application.
Okay. All right, I'm going to open up the public hearing. I'd like you to come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and raise your hand, and I'll call on you. No one's interested? Yes, sir, come on up.
I'm Walter Prescott from 2 Maston Drive. I'm a little confused right now. It's what I'm
Sorry? Go ahead.
from what I'm understanding is the proposal that's on the board right now is to accept or deny this $100,000 grant that was meant to be used for the athletic fields that involved the Zashek, Russo, and Leary property off from Packers Falls Road. Am I right? Am I wrong? Like I said, I'm a little confused at what was just said, so.
This part of the, this public hearing is about whether or not we should accept funds to build a field on that road.
But I guess where I'm having the problem is, shouldn't we have some sort of a design before we accept?
We've had several designs, and we're going to
I
see one.
realize that we have.
Well, let me answer the question. Don't ask me a question that's,
Okay, I'm
don't let
sorry.
me answer it. We've had several designs. We are going to look at this later on this evening, but even if we didn't have a design, we still need to decide whether or not we're going to accept these funds. These funds go back if we do not build a field. No questions asked. It's site-specific, whether we have a field or not. So I know what you're trying to say. Well, how can you approve funds if you don't know what your field's going to be? We know we want to put a field there. Whether, once we get a plan and we know that it's a doable plan, then we will accept the funds totally, because it has to come back to us with and then it goes back to them with a plan. So there's kind of more than one step.
I understand what you're saying, but Jim talked with me last week, and he came up with a plan that I assume he's going to present tonight, I don't know, that is entirely different from anything that we've seen at all. Now, I don't know if you people have seen it yet or not, but
Yep, lot less impact.
it's completely different than,
Yep.
I just wonder if maybe this particular motion should not be tabled till after we discuss the most recent or final plan at this time. I have to believe this is the final plan at this time.
It's up to the council, I guess.
I'm just wondering if we're putting one thing ahead of the other when we shouldn't be.
I guess we need to know if the council's going to accept the funds to build the
I
fields.
mean, I object to accepting this money,
Okay.
period.
All right.
But I object on the grounds of what the plan is and how it's being done.
Well, I guess,
And you don't want me to talk about that right now because you're going to bring up the plan later. I mean, that's where I'm going. I could talk about it right now, but I don't want to take up your time doing that if we're going to discuss it later. But on the other hand, whoever's sitting here that doesn't really know what the plan is and what the impact is should know that before they start voting whether to accept this money.
well, I guess it's a matter of which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Because there's no sense in looking at this if this gets voted down not to accept the funds. So either it doesn't really matter which one comes first, because one can't exist without the other.
Is this going to be an open discussion on the plan that Jim's going to present tonight? Is this something that we're allowed to speak on?
No.
What number is it?
Number 13.
Yeah, 13.
No, it's just a discussion, but this plan would go to public hearing.
So it's just discussion. Okay, then I want to object. I want to tell my part right now then. Is there any-
About
Of
the money?
why I don't think we should accept this money.
Okay.
Okay. The latest plan that Jim has come up with, and unfortunately I don't have it in hand, does anybody know what the true shape of the Leary property is? Okay.
I can get it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What is being proposed? Is this being the Leary property? When this all came about back in January, then in February it was voted to approve the sale of the Russo property, or purchase of it. We were told, because I brought up the name Zaschik, and we were told that the project could go forward and all three fields and everything that they wanted to do could be done simply with the purchase of the Russo property. Well, for whatever reason, and I don't know what it is because I haven't been involved, all of the project behind the Russo property and the Zaschik property seems to have been dropped. And from what Jim told me last week, he's planning one single field that's going to be on the Leary property. That field, I believe you told me 260 by 200? 231 by 140? Okay, 140, 241 by 140. This field will not be an official size soccer field. And I also believe what he told me was this will be the only field, there will be no baseball fields, it'll be strictly a soccer field. So this will not be an official size field. This will be a small field, I assume, that the elementary school kids will play on. They don't need an official size field. The other item that's in here is a parking lot for 38 automobiles. It's over in this corner here. Back when this was all presented originally, the line was showed across here. I didn't even know the town owned.
Okay, Mr. Prescott,
land.
you've been talking for 2 minutes, and I don't know what your objection is to the $100,000.
Well,
I'm getting.
well, number one,
Please let me finish. I'm getting a description of how things were and how they're being presented to you. It would really be helpful, and I'm not trying to, rush this, but we have 21 items on the agenda tonight, and this really is about whether we're going to accept the grant or not. So if you could just tell us what you
Okay.
object to, it would be really helpful.
Well, number one, the field is wedged in around wetlands.
Okay.
It's been kept out of the wetlands, but it's wedged in the wetlands. We were told the field would be 250 feet from Follett's Brook. It's 200 feet from Follett's Brook. We were told that the roadway that goes along Follett's Brook that's owned by the Newmarket Waterworks would only be used as an emergency exit for the fields should they go in. Now it's going to be the main road to get in and out. There's going to be parking out there. We were told there wouldn't be any cars parked out there. There's going to be parking for 38 cars out there. Those 38 cars are going to be parked, probably, if you get out there and measure it, you'll find that it's going to be in the shoreline protection zone for Newmarket's zoning, which is 125 feet from Follett's Brook. So now, that's going to have to be moved somewhere. There's blasting to be done there that was never intended to be done. Those are some of the reasons. The other reasons are, when this was all presented, originally, on this paper here, when the Zaschik property was purchased, or it was voted to purchase it, I don't know if it was ever purchased, one of the reasons was because of the master plan. And we've heard about the master plan since the 1st of January. And it says here, one of the immediate action items recommended in the plan was to develop at least one full-size soccer field, a baseball and/or softball field. We're not doing any of that. By this plan, we're not doing any of that. We're not going to have a full-size soccer field. We're not going to have a baseball field. So my problem is we're going to spend money on, and we're still not going to come up with what the master plan had in it. Not that I feel that that would have been right to put out there even if it had, but it's going to. The other item is, 2 weeks ago, or a month ago, you people sat here and made out a new dog ordinance, and you said that you didn't want dogs out on that roadway along Follett's Brook. That's one of the areas dogs are not allowed. Yet you're going to allow 38 cars to be parked out there. Through the conversation in the past, that there was 250 kids that are playing soccer, and that was one of the needs for the soccer field. Well, you're going to have approximately 200 or more cars going in and out of there up this roadway. This isn't a roadway. This road's going to have to be rebuilt to go in and out of there. To rebuild it, you're going to be into the wetlands along Follett's Brook. And these are the reasons why I'm objecting to this. And there's probably more here. I really thought we were going to get into a discussion on this tonight before we ever get into. So those are a few. There's more. I could go on forever, but those are the reasons. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Prescott. Anybody else? No one else? I'm going to close the public hearing, and Counselor Hart, and then Administrator Dixon.
This is the first time I saw the plan Mr. Prescott just picked up, and I expressed my frustration with that to the chair and to the chairman, and I have to agree, which Walter's going to be surprised, that I would rather have had the presentation on the plan, because I'm not going to vote to accept the grant money without actually knowing what we're going to do with it. And I know this is one of the ideas, but my reaction was essentially the same as his. When I saw this, I was like, it's not anything we said we were going to do to the public. And I fought hard for it because I thought I was being told what we were going to do was possible, and now I'm told it's way too expensive to do that, which is what a lot of people in the public are saying. And I know things change, and I know we do our best we can, but we're in a really hard position. We're still going to try to do the best thing for the town, but I can't proceed with a vote on accepting the grant funds until I've heard the whole proposal and the options that were considered and won't work, or why they won't work. So, sorry to muck things up. but-
Okay, thank you. Administrator Dixon?
I'd just like to say that I understand the chicken and the egg, and I understand Brian's point and Mr. Prescott's. But the dynamics of trying to put a project together like Jim has been putting together, trying to put together, and the funding sources and things is something that's pretty hard to explain, too, at times, publicly. I had planned, and you and I talked about it, that Jim Hilton would make a presentation, not only tonight about the discussion on the funds, but also on the plan as it evolved right now, and kill two birds with one stone, the hearing process. But that was objected to because maybe some of the counselors hadn't seen the original plan. But nonetheless, I thought it would have been an acceptable procedure because, you know, we all knew we were talking about fields out there. It's just a question of where. And so that was my input. I thought that it could have worked well tonight to have a presentation on the, have Jim start out with a presentation on the plan that is envisioned, and then the discussion about the money, and have it done with all in one swoop. But that was not the way we decided to go.
Jen?
If we accept the funds and we cannot come to an agreement on a plan for those fields, what is the step then? We just give back the funds?
First of all, you're not voting tonight to accept the plans. What you're
I
doing
know.
tonight is conducting to accept the funds. What you're doing tonight is conducting a public hearing to get input as to whether or not on the objections or the pros and cons from the public of accepting such a grant. A vote on this is not established for tonight. It would be later at the business meeting, and we changed that because of the fact that there was this thing about, well, we shouldn't present a plan to the public without making sure all the council have seen the plan prior to. And so tonight you're just conducting a public hearing to get the comments, okay, the pros and the cons. And then, because of previous discussions and confusion, we will be discussing the plan later. Again, you're not voting to accept the plan tonight. That can all be done. I think the thought was to present as much information as possible tonight. The vote would be at the business session.
Okay, but back to the question that I asked you is when we decide, if we decide to accept this money, and we, at which point we have not decided on the plans because we're not discussing those until afterwards, what happens then if we make the decision to accept this money, but then we can't come up with an agreeable plan for the fields?
Well, first of all, there will be no money accepted or money provided. You know, once you accept a plan, accept a grant, it doesn't mean you got $100,000 deposited in your account.
Right.
We have to go through submissions and documentation and everything else. If something happens that you decide at some point we just can't come together on a plan, it's not going to go, we haven't drawn any of the money. So we just notify them, and it goes back into the pool and it's reallocated to the communities that had an application in. That's as simple as it gets.
Okay.
There is a timetable which we have to vote, if we have to have a vote from you to accept the funds, just to retain the right to expend them, okay, until you can get a plan together. And that is very near to the business meeting, the September business meeting, I think. If we don't have a vote in that close proximity to say, yes, we're interested in town of Newmarket's wants this money dedicated, we will lose it, okay, all by itself. The decision will be made for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Counselor Hart?
Al, I think, the comments that you're making are definitely in reference to conversations we had, and I think that they are misunderstood, because what I said was that I thought it was problematic for there to be a public hearing, which is essentially saying that the council sanctioned the plan before the council's ever seen the plan and discussed it. Because usually we discuss a plan and say, yes, we think it's a good idea, and we motion it to a public hearing into the next step. And this has been reversed. That was my problem. It wasn't that I didn't want it to be presented tonight. It's that if we had a public comment on it before the council said it was a good idea, that's putting the cart before the horse and wasting people's time.
Well,
Because these comments that people might have, we might agree and say, go back to the drawing board. And, I guess we can have the public involved every step, but usually we don't, because we don't like to have really long meetings. It's not productive. So that was I just want to make it clear, that was my concern about that. It's not that, oh, Brian Hart hasn't seen the plan yet and I feel, like betrayed or something. It's that the council hasn't as far as I was aware, said this is a good idea, this particular idea, as a body, to put it to a public hearing, and the public hearing on accepting the grant money.
On a lot of
That's
occasions,
just what I
the council doesn't make a recommendation. They take the public comment.
This one was pretty significant. We made it clear that we had to vote on the plan and make sure it wasn't going to interfere with Falls Brook. And so, it just seems like it was a little bit backwards. It's okay. I want to clarify what I said.
Counselor Morrison?
I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
That's only 88 seconds.
No, I just really got interested in what he was saying. I'm sorry. What's the main reason for this? Is just that the original plans were too expensive?
I'd like to, at the 13,
at
go through
13.
that all with you and hope that you understand that. And then I'd be glad to send it out to public to have them look at it. I want you to know why. I think you need to know why.
Could we get the old design?
We're going to move ahead. That's what we are.
Can we get the old design? I'm sure that
Just to have the
Jim
two-
can.
I have it right here.
Oh, could I see a copy?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so does the council want to vote to send this to the, what month are we? The September business meeting for vote, since we're going to have a presentation on the plan later?
Oh, you brought the little one.
I'll make a motion. Get there.
I'll second that.
No, that wasn't the motion. The motion I was going to make was to send it, to delay a final vote on this until after the council accepts the plan for the fields.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. That wouldn't be
Motion
better.
Hart, second Morrison. Counselor Jarvis?
I was just wondering if we could possibly just move this right now on the, make a motion, I know there's one on the table, but if we could move this to item number 14 and maybe have a little bit more discussion about it right after we're discussing the plans. Because I'd like to discuss it right after after we review these plans before we send it for a vote, so that it's been a little bit, that was just a suggestion.
I like your thought process, Counselor Jarvis, but I don't think we'll have enough time to take Mr. Prescott's concerns, that were several of them, into account. I think some of them got to be looked at by our engineers if we do that. So, I mean, Brian and Brian have put a motion on the table. You can vote it up or down, and then another motion can come later to send this to the business meeting, which would give us time to review a plan and maybe put it later on the agenda, so Mr. Hilton could come back and say, okay, Mr. Prescott's right about this, wrong about this, this is what we're doing, this is the final. Because this may have to be revised based on what Mr. Prescott said.
And where does that put us in the frame for the time that this needs to be in?
Just a comment. We have 3.5 years to spend that money once we accept it, so we can modify the plan any way you want it. I want to, at this point in time, show you why the original plan, that when it came back, because you asked me to have Apple do that, why it wasn't acceptable for a number of reasons. Show you an alternative plan, and if you say, no, this isn't what we're thinking, then I'll go back and we'll go from there. We got plenty of time to do this. I mean, I would say the soccer people wouldn't say we have plenty of time, but I'll explain to you some of the rhymes and reasons of what we're doing this.
Neither will the baseball people.
Neither will the baseball people, that's
I
right.
understand that we have
That's
3
right.
years to spend the money, but my question is, how long do we have until we accept the money?
We have to accept it in September.
By September 30th?
No, yeah, I think it is, pretty
Okay,
close.
thanks.
Yep.
Okay, Counselor Jerry Hamel?
Yeah, I'm having a tough time figuring out why that can't be accepted now. I mean, it can't be spent until we have an approved plan. We know we're going to do something out there. I don't understand it. Councilor Dixon's comments made perfect sense as to the process, and I'm not understanding why can't accept it. In the meantime, get acceptable plans together and then proceed from there. It just doesn't make sense to just keep pushing this thing off, to me anyways.
Counselor Morrison?
Does this money have to be used for fields or just recreational?
Fields.
No, it
What you,
has to be
very
fields.
specific, what you
Has to be
applied for.
Can it be a bocce field?
It has to be what you
We
applied
don't need
for.
one of those.
I'll tell you, once you get one, you don't know how you live without it.
Administrator Dixon?
I think everything's been said, really.
Okay.
Jen hit it. It wasn't 3.5 years to commit to take the money. So we had 3.5 years once you commit to accept it, to come up with a plan. If you can't, then, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But if you don't vote on the acceptance of the grant, you never get to that point anyway.
Okay. Erica, can you read the motion back?
To delay the final vote on accepting the money until after the council reviews and accepts the final plans.
Okay. Counselor Jerry Hamel?
Yeah, given the wording of that vote, then that means we have to accept a final plan before we can accept the money. I think that'd really be tying our hands. This may not be the final plan. And we're running out of time to accept the money.
Okay, Administrator Dixon, can,
I don't know if I said, I'd like to not have it say final plan. I mean, this particular proposal as it is, I'm not sure if it'll get 4 votes. But if the fields are moved, it might, and that's my point. The really specific topography and how much, all that stuff, no, that's not what I need to know. I need to know the general concept of where it's going before I accept the grant. But that's me, and if the full council feels differently, that's what we'll do. Just to clarify what I meant, so.
Administrator Dixon, can you call the roll? Oh, did you have something? Oh, okay.
Did what Brian just said, does that change the motion?
No, I didn't hear him say he was amending or retracting his motion. I think he was just explaining his point of view.
Okay,
Do you want it read again?
sure, thank you.
To delay final vote on accepting the money until after the council reviews and accepts final plans.
Thank you.
Administrator Dixon, call the roll, please.
Councilor Hart.
Aye.
Councilor Marson.
Aye.
Councilor Will Hamel.
Nay.
Councilor Jarvis.
Nay.
Councilor Jerry Hamel.
Nay.
Councilor Caprioli.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-2.
Motion fails.
Oh, excuse me, yeah, right, excuse me, sorry.
So, we could do another motion to continue it to September
7th.
7th.
September 7th business meeting for a vote, and we'll just make sure that there's a plan in place and we've given approval for it before this item comes up on the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Council Morrison, is there a second? Wilfred Hamel seconds. Discussion? Councilor Jerry Hamel.
That motion, does that mean that that plan would be the final plan?
We-
Or that
no,
would be able
we
to be
will-
altered?
We will have a plan.
Okay.
I'm assuming it's going to be pretty close to the one that Jim's going to explain to us later. We can determine at that point, at that meeting, whether or not that's final or not, but I don't want to say it's going to be final tonight, because I think there's concerns that we need to address. And it may change some of the things. Maybe it means less parking, maybe it means we move 50 feet away, 50 more feet away from Falls Brook. It's, we need to look at that.
I guess that's what I was hoping it would mean, is that we weren't locked into something.
Correct. Counselor Morrison and then Counselor Jarvis.
I just like to clarify, I was assuming that by final plan, that didn't necessarily mean a final design. Like this, I think Councilor Hart was right and we should respect the process, but I was assuming that even if we needed to change something after this point, even with the wording final, that we could sort of amend. I'm not sure if I was right in assuming that.
Okay. Counselor Jarvis?
Is it?
Well, I guess I'm getting confused because I think we're beating this to death, because the whole point for that previous motion that Brian made and you second was that you didn't want to approve funds without a plan.
Right.
So,
That we've accepted.
That we've
whether it be
accepted.
final or not, and now we're talking about, you're asking questions, that it's okay if we change it, so
Well, I mean, move something, not put a roller rink in or something. I mean, you're like, oh, if the parking lot needs to move over 100 yards or this way, we're allowed to tweak the design, but the project is still essentially the
And
same.
I think that's what we were thinking,
Okay.
because my point was that Mr. Prescott brought up some valid concerns. I want to make sure
Yeah.
we address those.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, just that we're all on the same page.
Counselor Jarvis,
I did have a question. I just want to make sure that I understand your suggestion after Brian's motion, which would be that we would have a public hearing on the actual plans
Yes.
prior to us voting on the acceptance of the money. Okay.
I just want to clarify, though, that the plan comes before the final vote on the funds on the next agenda. Counselor Dixon, can you please call the roll?
Administrative.
Administrator,
sorry.
yeah.
Administrator Dixon.
All right. Counselor Hart.
No.
Counselor Morrison.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Caprioli.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, next item on the agenda, public hearing, AmeriCorps Vista host site. The town of Newmarket has been approved as an AmeriCorps Vista host site. The position will be administered by Plus Time of New Hampshire with Newmarket's contribution of $5,000. And glad someone's here to explain that. I just unplugged something. I got it.
I'll explain the mentoring program, and if you have any questions, we can get further into it with Annalisa here. Plus Time is a corporation, a nonprofit corporation in New Hampshire that basically administrates after-school programming and basically tries to have more and more programming available that comes right after school. So in other words, if there's kids that are latchkey kids or kids that are at risk, it allows them to be able to have some activity that's going on. They came to us and talked to us regarding possibly forming a collaboration. We were very interested in putting together a mentoring program, and I'm going to read this so you know more specifically. The mentoring program will be created through the Club Communion Program, that's why I have Annalisa here, with a collaboration of the school district and the Newmarket Steps Up organization, which is a bunch of parents. The program's main objective is to give our adolescent positive role models to assist them in the everyday lives as well as academically. These mentors will work with kids after school and on the club community trips to build up their self-esteem and self-worth, and to help them make the right choices as they mature and help them improve in their classes at school. The mentors will give the kids a chance to make connections with young adults and will help them reach their full potential for leading happy and productive lives. So what it is a bridge between the Club Communion Program actually happening and what's happening between that. So it allows us to have the mentors involved in the kids' lives during that time when there's not going to be a Club Communion Program. And then it's not just one weekend a month, that's right. Now, we've already started making connections with the university athletes. They wrote a grant. That grant was not accepted. They're going to go try after it again. But we have about 30 student athletes that are very interested in helping us with this. We have a lot of parents that are talking to us about this. So when we looked at the VISTA program allowed us to have a position that would allow us to have somebody develop this program, put it all together, not be the one-on-one there, but actually develop it for a year, and possibly even have us extended a second year for $5,000, which was probably around a $40,000 position. We don't have to pay any benefits, nothing. That's all through Plus Time. Basically, what they do is they contract with Vista, and then they farm them out. So what we're proposing to do is take the money that we have for work study, which we sometimes spend and sometimes we don't with UNH, allow us to be able to use that money for the Vista position this year with about a $1,400 balance, which we take for the revolving account to accept that position.
Counselor Jarvis?
Like you stated, they would be the coordinator, and what are your plans for actually staffing the curriculum and the plan that they would come up with?
That would be part of what they'd be developing. UNH, as Jim said, is very interested in getting involved in doing this through their program. with their football players, their varsity football players, they're really the ones that are doing it.
So mostly volunteers.
It's volunteers, yes, the
All
mentors.
volunteers.
Yes.
Thank you.
Jim, it says with Newmarket's contribution of $5,000, we're contributing $5,000?
Yeah, what we do is, just like we do with work study, it used to be 80-20, but now it's 60-40, so we pay 40, they pay 60, so that if a student comes in for work study, they get X. This is very similar to that. It's our contribution of $5,000, and they would come up with the $35,000, and that includes all the benefits and everything. So they would have benefits for that year. They could do an extension for a second year, many have. And what happens is, a lot of the people that run these activities, just like the Peace Corps, is they can use the money to defray their student loans that they have for school significantly, or they can take a stipend. And most of them are individuals that have graduated from school, want to contribute, spend some time giving back to the community, and also pay off their loans. That's the main piece of that.
Thank you. Counselor Jarvis?
One last one. I think it's a great program. I've done a little bit of research on the AmeriCorps Vista, and I'm excited that you looked into it and that it's a possibility. I just want to understand again that the money so you have $3,600 that you would have in reserve for internships, for work study.
No, not internships, just work study
Just work
programs.
study
And we
programs.
figure that we're going to end up with a university student anyways. Many times, in the last 3 or 4 years, we haven't been able to spend that money because what happens is it depends on the schedule of the individuals. This allows us to have a full-time position, do what we always have been looking to do with mentoring, probably have a UNH student, most likely. It could be a person from the BOTEC, anybody that's interested in doing that. They're open. And still take care of the objective. And I think the primary objective right now, seeing that the success of Club Chameleon with, 150, 160 kids, is allow us to be able to build that bridge. I can see things like, for instance, the game room being very more active. That person looking for help us with volunteers, helping us build the components of how that program will go. It'll be all volunteer-based. And that's what, it's being very successful with Club Chameleon, so why can't we do it all the time? I guess that's the thing.
They just did a survey of the Newmarket schools, and they said that the problems that the kids face with drugs and alcohol happen between 3 and 6 p.m. And that's that after-school time, because they're out on their own and their parents are working. So this is a program that will address that problem.
Counselor Hart?
I think it sounds great, and Jen asked a lot of the questions. The only question I have is, in 5 years after it's really successful, and the funding runs out, how do you expect, I'm assuming that it would want to continue, so how will we fund that? Have you thought about the long-term?
Yeah, all we're looking at really doing with the coordinator is to build the components for volunteers. We're not looking to build a position in that position.
But if you have a successful program, I don't imagine that you and Annalise, you're doing a great job and everything, but have the ability to coordinate a volunteer program.
The answer to the question is the school is very interested in working with us. I think there's a bridge somewhere in there between the schools. We can't just do it ourselves. We're going to need the schools. We're going to need parents. We're going to need someone to help us do those kind of things and do that. I think that there's a nice bridge there, too, with the schools, the parents, and us. There, too. And letting Club Chameleon be involved in that process. We're already doing that with the schools. So I think that you're going to find that the school is going to be very much involved in this process.
Counselor Brian Morrison?
So you're just asking for permission to spend these monies? You're going to fund it
Permission
yourself?
to be able to accept the grant, and then I also need permission to be able to use our $5,000 that we have for work study to be able to, as our portion, or our piece, with the $1,400 from the revolving account coming to actually make up for that. Yes.
I need to open it for a motion.
Oh, what made you think I was going to do?
I'm just helping you.
I got that twitch.
I was ready to speak out of turn, too.
Okay.
Make that motion.
No more
I'd like to open up to public hearing. If anyone has any comments regarding this topic, please raise your hand. I'll call on you, come to the podium, and state your name and address for the record. Is there any comments? None? I'll close the public hearing. Counselor Morrison?
What? Oh, yeah. I'd like to move that we approve this grant and allow Jim to spend the $5,000 to fund it, if that's properly.
You got to be specific in the motion.
Yeah.
From the work-study fund and the
And-
revolving account.
Yes.
So 1,400 from the
Revolving account?
revolving account,
And
3,600
3,600
from
from-
work study
Yep.
budget.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Morrison, motion. Counselor Hart, second. Any discussion? Can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Counselor Morrison.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Caprioli.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, public hearing. New Hampshire Trails 2005 RTP grant has been awarded to the town of Newmarket in the amount of $12,500 with $4,800 in-kind service improvements as our match. This trail will extend to Packers Falls Complex to Loisel Conservation Property in order to connect both town properties. You're a busy man.
This is, again, a grant that we wrote from the Moose, the license plate that you'll see later on for that. We didn't expect that we were going to get it this year, and we were very excited that open space, conservation, and the recreation and conservation, because it's definitely a working relationship here, we're accepted. What we're trying to do is use the same road that's down on Packers Falls, off of Fallisbrook, to extend it all the way to where the snowmobile trail is, and then do an offcut from there that will actually connect into Loisel. Loisel is, they're talking right now, putting in some parking eventually. We have, again, up to 3 years to be able to spend this money, so we have plenty of time to be able to talk about this. But what we'd like to do is, first of all, accept it, and then put together a plan and come back with you and show you the plan that we have in place so that you can see it and understand it. I need to go down there and do a lot of walking. The last time I walked it was it was in the, it was frozen. I need to now walk on it once if we accept the money, to go ahead with it, to see where we are. I've got 2 or 3 people that are residents that said they can show me an easier way to get through there, so that's where we are. Most of the work will be in-kind service. There'll be a little bit of gravel that'll be put in areas. There will be a wood walkway over some of the where if there's a wetland crossing. That will be acceptable for open space. Whatever they recommend with conservation, that would be acceptable. We wouldn't do anything. And the other thing is that the Boy Scouts would be very much involved in this. Probably 2 individuals will use this as their possible Eagle Scout project.
Okay, so you're looking to have a public hearing for comments and
Yes.
then move
Yeah.
this to September to be voted on?
Yes.
Since we haven't
Yes.
seen, okay. All right, I'll open the public hearing. Is there any comments regarding this Trails grant from the public? None, I'm going to close the public hearing. We need a motion to continue this for a vote to the September 7th business meeting, and to make sure that we put the plan before the vote to accept the funds, similar to the previous things ago. Is there a motion? Motion, Counselor Wilford Hamel. Second, Counselor Morrison. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Counselor Hart?
So, Jim, even if you can bring a tax map that shows where you want to put the idea of the trails, that would be
That'd be
great,
great.
because
It's
it's the same thing for me.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll have it in your packet.
Any other questions? Administrator Dixon, can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Counselor Morrison.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Caprioli.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda, public hearing, Emergency Management Ordinance 2005-09. The purpose of this amendment is that emergency management procedures have changed since September 11th. Technology has changed in the way emergency personnel communicates with each other. Do you want to go over that briefly?
Briefly, this ordinance is an amendment and an update of ordinance number 9610, which was adopted in 1996. It sets up the protocol that we use, which is subtly different than pre-9/11, but in the event of a emergency situation of significant nature here within the town of Newmarket, the seacoast area in the state of New Hampshire. We could go through, it's a lengthy document. The verbiage contained herein for an emergency management director is the same as the management of the language that was in the 1996 ordinance. That doesn't change. Our FEMA director locally is Candace Jarvis, has been for, as I learned today, more than 3 years, approximately 20 years. And she administers a meager budget of, I think it's $2,500 that we have in our annual appropriation. So it's about all I can say, unless we want to go right straight through the whole thing, which would be a very lengthy process. It's emergency management protocol, post 9/11. And it also coincides with the update of our codification effort.
I just have a question quickly regarding some page numbers. 2A, the coordinator of the Office of Emergency Management shall be responsible to the town administrator in regard to all phases of emergency management activity. So in other words, say there's a big fire. Who determines whether it's an emergency management situation?
Pretty much
Yourself?
collectively,
So
but it
you-
would be
you
more
and
than a
Candace
big
have
fire, yes.
Conversation, and then
Yeah.
you determine from there,
Yeah.
okay.
And command staff, which would be the fire
Fire chief,
chief, police chief, exactly.
Okay.
But it says that you're the town administrator is the sole criteria?
No, he is,
Does it say that?
Where's that? Where'd you read that?
Town administrator shall order emergency management forces to the
House-
aid. Is that what you're talking about? or-
The judgment of the town administrator shall be the
The sole
sole criteria
criteria.
necessary to invoke emergency powers provided in the town charter, ordinance code, or other appropriate
Yeah,
authorities.
yeah,
2.441A.
In the event of an emergency, we won't be having a council meeting. Command staff is going to have to take control. And let's hope we don't have an emergency like that.
Counselor Hart.
So, the thing that I mean, there's a lot of italics in the beginning, which is kind of basically saying what the threats are to the area.
Yes.
Nuclear power plant, Air Force Base, Naval Shipyard, or maybe targets.
Mhm.
They don't say that either way, but. And then, the only thing I noticed in the rest of it is it adds telecommunication facilities and physical plant facilities several times in different paragraphs. But I didn't see any broadening of your emergency powers or our emergency powers.
No.
Or Rick's or anybody else's, so.
No.
So I feel pretty comfortable
Yeah.
with
A
it.
lot of this, you're correct, deals with the important element locally is the communications. That was one of the big linkages in the 9/11 and the
Yep.
big problems in the 9/11, and that's dealing with that issue.
Any other questions from counselors before I open the public hearing?
I have one question.
Yep.
Is it, how do you read this? Subsection 2445.4, emergency management plan. Third to last page. The last sentence in that paragraph, it says, "In the event an amendment is pending at the time that a disaster is proclaimed under provisions of this section, the amendment will be considered approved immediately and will remain effective unless specifically revoked." Is that a good idea?
What's that mean?
It's
Well,
amendments
that-
to the emergency management.
If there's an amendment in process, in pending, it's just like a zoning ordinance, okay? Once you,
Once you post it, it's
yeah,
to go to public hearing, then it's considered, if you come in later, or if a disaster happens later, you gotta follow that new,
Even though it hasn't been adopted? and it's-
yeah. Well, you know, if it's a crucial protocol that's being considered, and I would think it would be if it's being proposed for amendment,
Mhm.
and it was a matter of life and death, and you say, well, no, somebody says, no, we aren't going to do that, it's not adopted,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense.
Well, it just seems like if it hasn't been approved, it might, I mean, I can see if it's,
Wouldn't this come from the state? Any kind of change to this?
A lot of the state's going to make recommendations, absolutely. And, I guess we can debate that, here, but, if there is an amendment being proposed, that means it's been discussed. That means that if it's being proposed for adoption, that somebody's supported it moving it along. So it's not a bad idea.
right, but I mean, it's possible that it could be contested. It just seems that seems a little wide
Well, if
open.
we're all alive after the emergency.
That would be great.
The reason that's in there, Brian, is because if it's pending, you don't want to sit there and have a discussion in an emergency situation about whether or not which one we should pick. You just,
Right.
the decision's made for you. You go with this one.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, it still feels, I mean, I can see why you're doing it, but it just seems to put a lot on the table that might not need to be on the table. It just felt funny. And the other thing is the line of succession. Should the department heads, shouldn't you do the line of succession? Or the, how do you call it?
Where are we at now?
I'm sorry, subsection 245, paragraph 2.
Town manager shall also prescribe the position.
The lines of succession? Shouldn't you say who's going to replace somebody if they get knocked out of the order? Or is that normal for them to do their own picking?
Well, I think it'd be normal there would be direct protocol there if, let's say, the chief of police, you're going to go
Right.
bang, okay, so it's going to be his designee. I wouldn't have any problem with that. I'd go down the command staff that's there. I wouldn't take a patrol officer and put him, if the chief of police wasn't there.
Right.
I wouldn't skip over the lieutenant or the captain. I would go with the next command, so that would be almost like,
Oh, I see. I thought this was more for informal town, what is it? But I was thinking about,
no, I
It's
wouldn't.
for the emergency
Situations.
people involved with the management in emergency situations,
Right.
which I think was defined earlier.
Mhm.
yeah, it was sort of like, it was sort of defined as anybody we need.
Whether you want it or not.
Yep. We encourage you to volunteer.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there any comments regarding our Emergency Management Ordinance 2005-09? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We can vote. Go ahead, Brian.
You were gonna say we could vote tonight?
I was going to say, we can vote tonight on this?
Well,
More in form of a
Did we ever
pleasure.
introduce this?
Oh, yes.
I must have been on vacation
Yeah.
that day.
We were out, you and me.
Well, that was vacation, that was fun.
Mhm.
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 2005-09.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion, Counselor Hart, second, Counselor Wilfred Hamel. Discussion? Can you please call the roll?
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Counselor Morrison.
Nay?
Counselor Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Capirola.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda, public hearing, Nostrum Conservation Easement. This easement will protect one of the last two remaining working agricultural farms in Newmarket, including grants from USDA Farm and Ranch Land Protection Program, New Hampshire Fish and Game, Nature Conservancy, and the Great Bay Resource Protection Partnership and town funds. And Clay, I believe you're here to give a brief statement regarding this.
Well, we've met on this a couple of times.
I know.
You've been briefed all along. The Nostrums are here, in case you would like to feast your eyes upon the
Yay.
Nostrums.
This is wonderful.
I can tell you, this will probably be their last meeting. They have been some of the most patient people I've ever worked with. So as you know, this has been a complex negotiation because it involves sometimes conflicting conservation efforts. You have a farmland grant that wants to preserve agricultural and farming, and then on the other side, we have the New Hampshire Fish and Game and the Nature Conservancy, who are interested as well in preserving agriculture, but have other interests related to habitat and resources and public access. So the document that you have on the purchase and sale and the easement is still being changed as we're trying to negotiate out these various groups. But I can tell you that whatever happens, the town will be the easement enforcer, and once this deal is all closed, I will create an outline and a monitoring package for the town, because it's so complex, so that anybody can pick that up once a year, follow a form, and go through and discuss with the landowners at the time that the easement is being monitored to all these different issues. So this is the formal request, that you allocate the funds from the two accounts, $75,000 from the Conservation Fund and $100,000 from the Open Space Bond. And just to go over the other funding efforts, the Nostroms are donating $37,500 in value, and the Farm and Ranch Land Protection Program is contributing $212,500, and the Great Bay Resource Protection Partnership, which is a consortium of conservation groups, is contributing $155,000. So the town of Newmarket is spending $175,000 in a $542,500 effort. So it's a very good project, in my opinion, because of all the groups involved. They've already identified a family who's going to take over. They're done farming. They're going to live next to the farm, and the family who's taking over still, they're also patient people, apparently, are organic farmers who are also wildlife specialists in their professional life and are community-supported agriculture. And like I said in the public release, they're interested in working with the town of Newmarket to explore future farmers market options. So there's a lot of community building going on in this project, and so I think of all the projects we've done are great, but this one has a lot of unique elements to it. So I'm here for any questions if you have any.
First, I want to say thank you for your hard work and endurance. I know you've worked on this a very long time, and I want to say thank you to the Nostroms, too. Thank you very much. Is there questions from the council before I open it up for public hearing? Would you say 75,000 was kind of, I missed the first one.
75,000 from the Conservation Commission's, the fund that they monitor, the Open Space Conservation Fund.
Okay.
It's more Conservation Fund, I should just say. I did do this map. There's the yellow parcel is the Nostrum farm, and all the green is existing conservation. The blue parcel is going to be next on the agenda. So that's how the conservation network is turning out in the southwest quadrant of our town. It's getting pretty substantial. This piece that kind of stands out like a sore thumb is the town's dump. Or I don't know. Is there a more PC word?
Former
landfill. Sorry, landfill. The closed landfill is right here. So
yeah, transfer station.
yeah, recycle. And then down here is the proposed Piscasset Greenway. So there would be a very significant corridor of open space.
Thank you. Any questions from councilors? Councilor Jarvis?
Clay, could you just talk a little bit? I didn't see a map in there that showed the limited public access, which I believe was called the trail corridor.
Yeah.
Could you just briefly talk about the trail corridor for a minute?
The trail corridor is along the eastern portion of the property, which the intent is to provide some kind of potential connection through these locations. So it would be on the easternmost portion of the property. There's woodlands in this location, so it would be staying in the woodlands. The idea is to have public access, but keep them out of the way of the agriculture. This is meant to be a working farm forever. And there's a map that I have in my package that details a potential location for certain times of the years where you could walk this way. And then there's also a utility easement that would be open for public access. But, this parcel and this parcel are still not served, but if they do, then that could connect up. And then the Nostroms have also agreed to offer landowner-based public access. So if somebody wants to access the land, they can go to the landowner and say, may I hunt or may I access? And then that would be granted on a case-by-case basis, depending on the agricultural activities at the time. This is the problem associated with these competing interests.
And just for a note, I think it's spelt trial instead of trail. You just might want to check the spelling once or twice.
So which of the 37 pages
I
of
know,
text are you?
I have it. I'll show it to you later.
All right.
Anybody else? No? Okay, I'd like to open up for a public hearing. If there's anyone who'd like to speak, raise your hand, I'll call on you. Please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. I see no hands, no comments at this time, so I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion. Counselor Hart.
I'll make a motion to accept the grants from the Farm and Ranch Land Protection Program, the Hampshire Fish and Game, and expend the town funds for the acquisition of the Nostrum Conservation Easement. And with the only thing being that we just see the final easement before the town signs it.
Is there a second? Second, Counselor Wilfred Hamel, motion Counselor Hart. Any discussion? Can you please call the roll, Administrator Dixon?
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Counselor Morrison.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Caparelli.
Aye.
Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, public hearing, Silverman Schneer, Open Space Commission proposes acquisition of a conservation easement on 40.5 acres on Neal Mill Road.
Every single one so far.
Yeah, come on up, Ellen.
This is like a record for a number of public hearings in one meeting.
I'm Ellen Snyder, member of the Open Space Commission, 26 Johnson Drive. It's been a while since I've been here because I now have to use glasses to read. Not a good thing. I'm presenting this on behalf of the Open Space Commission. We've been working on this project also for a couple years with Jean Silverman, who lives at the end of Neal Mill Road, and her father, Cecil Schneer, who lives in Exeter. Together they have 4 parcels. Clay said it's down here. This is, I think, our only dead-end road in town that continues on as a Class 6 road. So they live at the very end of that, or Jean lives at the end of the road, and that's where the parcels are. Just give you a few highlights about the properties. There, I think one of the most, or we think one of the most unique things is there's 1,200 feet of frontage on the Piscassic River on both sides of the Piscassic River. And as we heard at the start of the meeting tonight about drinking water in town, one of our biggest issues, we think this is a really important waterway through town. We have taken surface water from the Piscassic in the past and certainly may do it in the future. In terms of a long-term investment in protecting the Piscassic River, we think this is a key parcel. It's besides the Tuckers, it's the first parcels as the Piscassic River flows into town. And if you remember, we protected the Loisel property a few years ago, which is at practically the other end of the water. So hopefully we can work on some of the projects in between as well. So surface water protection is really one of the key features. Jean Silverman and Cecil Schneer have signed a purchase and sales agreement for the conservation easement for $275,000, which is below the appraised value, so it's a bargain sale. And
what was the appraised value, Ellen? I'm sorry.
We haven't made that public, but we
Okay,
can
all right,
if you'd
that's
like.
fine.
It's at least $50,000 below the appraised value.
Okay.
I'll say that. And we have secured a $100,000 grant from the Great Bay Resource Protection Partnership, one of the partners that also helped fund the Nostrum and that has helped on several other projects. So $100,000 grant and $175,000 from the town. It's obviously a very scenic part of town, very unique recreational area in town. So again, it provides some of that outdoor recreation opportunities. The properties themselves are not really conducive to trails. It's a lot of wetlands, some upland as well. They do some forestry there. But because the 2 Class 6 roads run through, there's a lot of recreational opportunity that's going to be able to continue, and you'll still have a very unique experience if this land gets protected. And also, as Clay said, it connects up, or at least is very close proximity to lots of other protected land. including hopefully the Piscasset Greenway that they're working on in Newfields. So what the Open Space Commission is proposing is to actually tap into, let me get it right here, I'll read the Newmarket Public Water Supply Land Protection Fund. In 1999, 2000, and 2001, we voted in town to put money into this fund to protect the aquifer, and then in 2002, I think it was, we voted to expand that to include surface water, 2003, one of those years, to include specifically the Piscasset River and the Lamprey River. So this project fits within the spirit of that, those funds. It's got a lot of frontage in the Piscasset River, so we think this is a good project for those funds. So we just hope you'll support the project, and we're ready to go forward with the other aspects in terms of property survey, phase 1, and working out the details of the easement, if you can support the project.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Did you say that abuts the Piscasset Greenway? Not quite, right?
Quite, it's,
Okay.
the
It's
Tuckers
close
owns
by,
the
though.
property, right, it's sort of the next,
Very close.
one ownership in between.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would there be a signed entrance to where you can enter that property to hunt, fish?
Right, it will
or-
be open, what we've talked about is, it's sort of currently passive recreation, they have,
I heard it was really good fishing over there, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, fishing,
Not that I'm a fisherman, but my son is.
right, there's lots of sort of walking access, because again, those Class 6 roads practically border 2 sides of most of the parcels. So you have pretty easy passive access, and again, it's not really conducive to putting in organized
It's
trails.
not a trail, but there would be a sign there saying, or something, so that you would know, I mean, where you could start or.
Yeah, we would talk about in terms of, there's a conservation easement there, that the town would hold the easement, similar to the Hilton easement that we did last year. There's a little bit more public access because of the trail that the Wynn Hilton maintains, but.
It's kind of obvious where it is. too,
Right.
so.
If I could just add to your answer your question.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I think Jim was out there on Monday, and I was out there on the site walk on Saturday, and basically, the best way to enjoy the property is to walk down Neal Mill Road once there's a chain across it. And the town actually might propose to the voters, assuming that the Tuckers, who own land south of it, don't mind, making Neal Mill Road from their property boundary to Newfields a Class A trail. So it's no longer a road. And it still allows the landowners to access it for logging and stuff like that. But anyway, that's the best way to access it. And then you can walk all the way into Newfields on the dirt road, or you can shoot off onto Old Lee Road and go across the Piscasset River on the timber bridge.
Yeah, there's a
That's-
great little
that's-
bridge, as you go on Old Lee Road, which I'm not sure what they call it in Newmarket, but once you get right to the river, you can look downstream and look a little bit upstream. It's
Go
pretty
fishing.
well run in, but it's a really nice site there.
So that's pretty, there might be ways to put signs there, because the town owns the roads.
I didn't necessarily mean to sign a trail, but just where you can enter and kind of give, I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't get to go Saturday morning, I had company all summer, and this weekend, but is there an obvious entrance to where you can walk on it, I guess?
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
a
it's, yeah,
beaten
it's,
path, so to speak.
yeah, it's
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
obvious where everything is out there, yeah.
Okay.
And we would have, I'm sure we'd put conservation land signs or something, or easement signs, that sort of thing.
Okay. And Counselor Jerry Hamel, and then Counselor Jarvis.
This particular easement, would it allow for potential town well in the future? That's, in long ago surveys, that area had been identified as a potential for a well. Its location, I guess, to the town water system wasn't great, but those times are changing, and I didn't know if, given the sources of the funds,
Right.
it probably should allow for a little exploration for water. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know, Brian may be able to help, if that really changes the value of the easement, if you're asking for.
I mean, it depends on the landowner, if they're receptive to it, you can ask for it, but it's a lot that's a lot different than pretty much any conservation easement. I mean, I discussed with Al a long time ago another area nearby, and we calculated the cost of laying the pipe to connect to the water system, and it was several $1 million. So, and today's cost. So it seems pretty unfeasible from that location to lay pipe to connect to the existing system. But if it's something that the council wants, then maybe we should propose it for discussion.
Counselor Hamel?
I guess what I was getting at is the funds, one of those,
Public water supply.
yeah, public water supply. I don't know, to me, it should be a little bit broader than just using it to buy land, you know? It
Well-
should probably allow for
Public waters.
protecting it and also drawing it.
Right, the fund is to buy land to protect drinking water. It could be groundwater, it could be for a well, but it does specifically say surface water, Piscassic and Lamprey River. So I completely understand what you're saying, but just be clear in terms of what the money can be used for. It can be to help protect surface water, and specifically does mention Piscassic and the Lamprey, because those are our two surface water sources in town. But we can certainly ask the question of, it would be, well, it could be Gene or Cecil's property.
Administrator Dixon and then Counselor Hart.
I believe the property we had talked about on this aspect was the Fisk property, in which we did reserve the right to.
Yeah, and that one was funded with the state water supply.
Right.
So
Right.
they generally require that to be part of it, but since the town owns the land,
Yeah.
it's a little different. You
Yeah,
don't own
right.
this-
I understand. I understand it's an easement.
And that, but we also talked about the property, the Piscassic Greenway as a potential water source, because that's the area that in the maps I've seen has been identified as the high gravel pack, well, not gravel, but stratified drift to the southwest of Shanda. There's a huge spring complex area. But, you know, I was like, all right, well, if we run a pipe, and it was literally like 3.5 miles of piping just to connect to Packers Fall, to Moon Lake Brook over Piscassic River near Lozelle.
Certainly to run 3.5 miles of pipe for 50 gallons a minute wouldn't be worth it. But if you were fortunate enough and it was an area that had been identified to hit a 250 gallon a minute well, the cost of, it changes the picture considerably.
I don't have any.
Okay, Counselor Jarvis?
When I was there for the sidewalk on Monday, we parked there and were able to walk in. And I'm just wondering where people would park. I mean, I'm assuming we were parked on the property that's going to be subdivided off for the residents that are still going to be living on that property.
Right.
So if we were going to use that as a recreation trail along the same lines as signage, where would people be able to park to access the trail?
Yeah, we've sort of really thought about it as a, the way most people have been using that area is mountain biking or walking.
Walking all the way along Grant and going down.
Yeah, or snowmobiling, maybe coming in from the other side and snowmobiling on those Class 6 roads. And so, because it's it is at the end of the dead-end road, and her house is literally right there, we didn't propose that. But again, I mean, we could ask, but it's not the greatest place for public parking given where her house is.
Right.
So we were sort of thinking as kind of a mountain biking, walking. But again, there's other,
Park and access to walk through there.
Yeah, I mean,
Came from Newfields, maybe.
yeah, I mean, if we were buying the property, easements are a little different in terms of easement versus purchased.
Is there any other questions before I open it up to public hearing? None? Okay. I'd like to open up to public hearing. Raise your hand, I'll call on you, come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Or is there anyone that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Yes, sir, come on up.
My name is Kirk Dorsey. I live at 2F Bass Street. And I doubt there's much opposition, but I was on the site walk on Saturday and thought it was an excellent piece of property to preserve. As a bird watcher, I thought it was, the landscape there was great. I could see in the spring this is going to be excellent wildlife potential, but also the idea of protecting the river corridor. That stretch of the Piscassic River is the closest thing to a pristine river around here. I use that word guardedly as an environmental historian. We never use the word pristine, but that part of the river is in excellent shape. So it strikes me as being an excellent use of the money, if the money is to protect surface water sources. If that land were to be developed and people were to put grass down and pesticides and things like that, I could imagine a pretty high pollution load on that stretch of the Piscassic. So it strikes me as a very good use of the town money, so I'd endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, no more comments. I'll close the public hearing. And is there any other discussion by council? There is none. I will entertain a motion. Councilor Hart?
I'll make a motion to authorize the expenditure of the $175,000 from the Public Water Supply and Protection Fund for the acquisition of a conservation easement on the Silverman Schneer property on Neal Mill Road. And again, subject to the council seeing the final conservation easement and accepting the Great Bay money as well.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Jen Jarvis beat you. Councilor Hart, motion. Jen Jarvis, second.
I don't mind. She's
Can you please
fast.
call the roll?
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Counselor Morrison.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Caprioli.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next item, public hearing, Moose Plate
Only at 8.
Moose Plate Grant, Wigan Farm Tuttle Swan Conservation Area, to create a walking trail from the parking lot to purchase materials for construction of the bridge crossing the wetland, to mow the trail 2 to 3 times a year, and to purchase and install an iron gate at the entry point onto this property. And who is,
Madam Chairman, we have Ellen Snyder, who wrote the grant here tonight, can answer any questions and make a brief presentation.
I was going to introduce her after she sat down.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is a grant that the Conservation Commission has applied for through the efforts of Ellen, so I think she would get back up again and explain it much better than I.
I didn't think he was going to do that.
Yeah, we submitted a grant. This was the Moose Plate grant. You can submit one for under 5,000 or one for over 5. The under 5 are much easier to write, so it's, I think, 4,925. Is that what the number is?
Pretty close.
And because of Wigan Farm, Grapevine Hill property, it's a big property. There's, lots of management to do, and we thought that would be appropriate use for a grant fund. So what we put in there is to have an iron gate at the top of the hill where the curve is, where we don't really want people to continuously go in there, so there'd be an iron gate there. And to help mow the field, there's costs with mowing. I think there's some invasive species, so there's some different components there marking the boundary. So basically just to help do some of the management out there.
okay. And where's the money coming from to purchase the materials?
The grant would pay for, the grant would be used to purchase any materials, so it's coming from this state conservation committee, Moose Plate grant.
Oh, grant, yep, all right, I
No
see.
match?
The Moose
No.
Plate kind of threw me off a little.
There's some match, but it's
No
sort of
match,
in
okay.
kind. We have so much match out there, we got
Labor.
coming out our ears.
With the Moose Play, what happens is there's that, you pay $30, and
Yep.
it gets split 6 ways. And $5 goes to this agency, and then they redistribute it for projects like this.
All right. Counselor Hart and then Administrator Dixon.
The only question I have is, do we know when, are we going to install the iron gate before, like soon, if we approve this? Because vehicles are still driving up and down there, and it's...
Yeah, there was some snafu in the paperwork, so hopefully
Okay.
we'll go forward.
As soon as we get the...
Okay, great. And then, just related to this area, is that an adjacent property owner continuing to use the property? without town permission for their own use. So hopefully we can address that.
I've looked recently.
Administrator Dixon?
Taken care of.
Counselor Gyros?
So you're hoping to be able to do all of these things listed here for under $4,925?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions of the council before I open it to public hearing? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion on this.
Do we need to authorize it or approve it, or?
We need to authorize it, I believe.
Accept.
Accept it. Counselor Hart?
I'll make a motion to accept the Moose Plate grant for the Wigan Farm Tuttle Swamp Conservation Area recreation-related improvements.
Counselor Morrison?
I'll second it.
Hart motion, Morrison second. Any discussion? None, seeing none. Administrator Dixon, can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Hart?
Aye.
Counselor Morrison?
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis?
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Caprioli?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, I'm going to do this next public hearing, and then we'll take a break. Next public hearing is acceptance of the Riverwalk Grant Phase 2, acceptance of grant including a $50,000 grant from the New Hampshire Coastal Program. And we've heard this several times. We have a $50,000 match. Together we have $100,000. Is this correct, Clay?
Yeah.
Okay, and...
I'm sorry, what
Well,
was
I
the
said
amount?
we have a $50,000 grant. We have a match of 50.
Yes, of 50,000 in value, in-kind services, and cash
And
equal.
that would total 100,000.
for the total project cost. I don't know if you've been down there, but they've already started rebuilding the seawall.
Saw that?
Phenomenal. The guy is amazing. He really is. Pickering Marine.
Wow.
And Rick has already started on the water line. You've already seen that work happening, so it's coming together. So hopefully in 6 weeks it'll be done.
Awesome.
We're now waiting on NOAA's representative to review the easement document, and she apparently is not well, and so she's unable to get to it, and so it's sitting in Washington. And apparently there's only one person in the entire federal government who reviews these easement documents. It's been reviewed by 2 lawyers, but they need to review it, so.
Very good. All right.
You could submit it on tape.
Yeah,
There's an
in
idea.
this amount of time, I could chisel it into granite. Send it to him.
All right, any comments from the counselors before I open up to public hearing? None? Any comments from the public? None? Okay. Counselor Morrison?
Move to accept this grant? Unless I needed to word it more?
Well, should say accept as a grant from the New Hampshire Coastal Program.
From the New Hampshire Coastal Program to complete Phase 2 of the Riverwalk.
Very good. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion, Morrison, second, Counselor Wilfred Hamel. I was going to say Hart. Any discussion? Sure.
Clay. Clay, could you just, I know that you've told this to us before, but I've been asked this question and was unable to answer it. The $50,000 match that we're coming up with, I know part of those, I know it's divided up between several things. How much of that is actually coming from this Riverwalk fund that has been created that we have?
Up to the maximum would be 50, but it's not intended to do that. I mean, that's why I asked, in case there was some situation that prevented me from every minute I spend on the grant is a match. Every minute that people donate in terms of doing things is a match. So my estimate, and I would hate to do it because I'll just get beat up if I'm wrong. So $49,999. I don't know. You know, I don't want to say anything and then find out it's not going to happen, because just like the last one, we found unforeseen costs, and that's why the lights aren't in. You know, the lights aren't in because we're, forgot something. It's because we ran up against our $100,000 limit. And so, we're waiting to buy the lights as part of this phase, and that may push us into a pretty substantial chunk of money.
Okay.
Short answer is you're authorizing $50,000 from the reserve with this. you know.
It's been authorized already.
Yeah.
Okay.
But every, like I said, every dollar, every minute that I work, all the time that Rick spends on it, everything can be used as an in-kind match. The value of the easement can be used as an in-kind match, and then we'll build up from there. But, you know, we'll have to determine what you want to cut corners on to save money, you know, rather we're going to have the Cadillac Riverwalks or the asphalt and, you know, fake tree or something. Nice
Thank you.
spotlight.
Counselor Hart?
I have some Norway maples in my backyard.
Yeah,
if you want to
excellent.
transplant them.
Those are.
No, but I guess
are my
what you're
favorite
saying is
trees.
that you're going to use as much match as possible and use their cash, and then when you have cash needs,
Only
you have to
then.
spend more than $50,000 in cash to get it done. You'll start using the town's cash because you're going to have at least $50,000 a match between the easement and your guys' time.
Easily. I would say we're pretty close to.
Right. Okay.
I could be pretty
I just
comfortable
want to make
with
sure I was hearing it. So. Okay.
It's really the lights are the killer. Yeah, you have no idea how expensive those lights are. Well, you do, I'm sure, but they're very expensive.
We should, yeah.
Yeah, you should have an idea of how. And, you know, we had, those of you that were not here for the brick discussion, which is one of my favorite town council meetings, when I brought in all the different bricks, that other, phase one could have been $100,000 in bricks alone. But because the council had the foresight to go with the concrete paving masonry unit, or whatever it was called, we were able to do that at a much cheaper, you know, a struck brick would have cost us $100,000 just for the bricks. So, you know, there are ways, creative ways to save money, and we will be looking for those. I will report back to you every 2 weeks.
Any further questions?
Can you use it to match the time we've been here talking about it?
Sure.
Yes, in fact, yes, and I'll bill you at your hourly rate. I will. What's that, 75?
Okay. Administrator Dixon, can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Counselor Morrison.
Aye.
Counselor Wilhelm.
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Caprioli.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break.
Hey, Al, you having the snack rib?
What's that?
You having a snack rib?
Yeah,
On a roll.
Oh, I guess so.
You've been a good guy.
I'm going to nominate Commission for the municipal. They're going to do this year, or the foresight for that. Once a year. Senator Gregg. Are there any particular species that are plants?
Are you done?
Like others. Did you want to mow the whole thing, like the pond all the way up to the? Okay. Okay, well, that'd be great to keep this field, because,
Yeah, I don't know what I just say that there's,
I got a copy there. We get a copy.
do you have obelisks in the field? Okay. Well, maybe they'll move over to, because there were, at one point, I think there were about a dozen over there. Yeah, so I take my dog out there maybe once.
I gotta make some.
Like I was thinking tomorrow, I mean, tomorrow, we go to Mill Road and sneak it down class 4 tracks and see how much poison ivy should find. So, they're very tempting, you know. So, great, can you tell me your place? Robert, Pride, okay, yeah, I'll see your, I do see it on the email. Kurt. Okay, but some people are, yeah.
Somehow.
All right, I'll let you know as soon as I get an answer from you.
Thank you. That sounds
And I'll see you on the 27th.
She's gonna be. She's gonna patch up. I gave you that. You know who's going to come over first? Pat Allen.
You got the agenda there, right?
Yeah. I don't.
Because I was gonna be late. I mean, I was already late.
We'll forgive you this time, but next time.
You don't know how to go to that house.
How's that guy named, fat guy who ran for council?
Oh, he was sitting in the, right over there?
No, that
No?
That's Prime.
He isn't the one that ran for that guy?
I got planning board.
Yes, I don't. I remember the guy, but I don't remember him that well. He was on something though, wasn't he? On another board?
He's on a budget committee.
Okay.
He's the guy. Name down in case they ask who the hell's on it.
Yeah, I don't. Al would remember them.
Try to use our light cable, which we purchased in the sky. Way through Neil Mill Road all the way out. Basically, class 6 road.
Did I call you to go?
Well, we've been in to look at the backside of, what they call now the derelict properties, what used to be.
And that comes out near where Albert built that bridge there, the pound bridge there.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact.
But there's a right of way coming through. There's one comes out right from the,
The Newfields Road is improved.
did you guys say? I know you did. You guys were gonna do CFP appointments tonight?
We already did it.
No, at the last meeting, Brian made the motion to wait
Is it on
until
there?
we get all of 7 members on it.
Totally different.
To this meeting until, and so I gave Al the list of the 2 planning board guys and the 2 budget committee guys.
Ask Al.
You don't remember that last meeting when Brian made the motion to continue it until we had all the names? Oh, come on, you're not that old. Jesus.
They all become one after.
Yeah.
We had our first grandson this year.
Oh, no way. Mr. Fillion wants to know. Other business.
Get anything in on time, but yeah, he wants it.
I did get a long
What, was
time. I got to last.
Was it on Golf Day or something? Golf Day?
Oh, I just got back from playing golf.
You guys approved the motion on Marston Farm without seeing the plan.
Oh my
That
gosh.
Clay's gonna be developing. You had no idea what that plan is.
Yeah, it's,
Unreal.
It's amazing to me how you've got double standards.
We do have double standards.
I couldn't believe we
And I gave it to the council.
There are some trails
Yeah, but
going
you
in.
have to have an official
They're in
plan
their
for a
box.
trail? Oh, okay. I can't remember.
They can say, I never saw it.
I can't remember the guy's name.
I'll just miss a couple of meetings, that's all.
15.
Hollis,
Yeah, and then your memo came on the 15th, so I did it the same day. Now, that's pretty good. I don't normally do that.
But no one's seen it.
Oh, yes. That was delivered to, that was put in the council boxes, no question.
So it should be in the council box.
Didn't make the agenda, because the agenda was made last week.
Motion.
We're gonna handle it.
But we
This
didn't,
meeting.
yeah, I know, but we didn't have anything,
Oh.
you gotta be timely.
Excuses.
I didn't get candy. Can I get some M&M's?
Sure.
Are there M&M's?
Oh, great.
Did you get my letter? Thank you. I just want to make sure you got it, because
Boy, you spent a lot of time here. You must be running for something. Besides running for your life.
I have yours.
Hey, Ian, is that your dinner? If it is, I'll bring dinner next time for you. Man, Oreos, peanut butter, and Doritos. I never eat anything like this. Just know that
I'm gonna hit the wall at about an hour.
I think I was gonna get that.
It doesn't look like we're gonna get out of here anytime soon.
And she said there's 6 non-public items. I was like, what?
Well,
This one's a little fast. 10's gonna be fast. 11's gonna be fast. At least 12 should be pretty fast. 13 will take a little while.
they should all be fast, man.
13 won't.
Water
15
ban.
won't. Water ban won't.
Nope.
Frankly, 'cause
I know, so they're training, and just so you can have another one.
Nah, why talk about the weather? Everybody knows what's going on. Yep, raining again.
it's great. I got a dehumidifier in my basement. It fills up with water. I pour it into a bucket. I walk outside and I pour it in my plants. I'm like, woo! I can water my plants. I figured out how to do it. Spending like $5 a gallon to get it out of the dehumidifier. So much money to run this thing.
My plants aren't looking very good. It kind of, few leaves came back.
Put a little
Why aren't you here?
Actually, I have to decide which plant's more worthy. I take the leftover
I
water
handed
from the
this out
dog
earlier,
bowl.
didn't I? This other memo from Leo? I handed that out.
Yes,
to
you
you.
did. It was on our
Okay.
chairs, or-
Okay, good.
We all back? Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. We're on agenda item 10, Resolution 2005-18, withdrawal from the recreation facility capital reserve for irrigation at Leo Landroach Field. Which I'm going to read. Is this the introduction? Are we introducing?
This is a resolution, so this is a glorified motion.
Okay. Wait a minute. Okay. Resolution relating to the withdrawal from the recreation facility capital reserve for irrigation at Leo Land Rock Field. Whereas the capital improvement program describes the improvement of Leo Land Rock Field complex, and whereas irrigation of all fields has been planned to keep the fields in better shape, and whereas the irrigation for the Leo Land Rock Field will bring a donation of turf for a field that will bring a field into compliance to be a regulation baseball field with baselines, and whereas improvements to B Field has been also planned, and whereas a well needs to be drilled that will allow for irrigation of B Field, and whereas the well will also allow for future water usage at the Leo Land Rock Recreation Complex, and whereas the Recreation Facility Capital Reserve has approximately $439,520.69 currently set aside for recreation projects. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Newmarket Town Council does hereby approve the release of $7,783 from the Recreation Facility Capital Reserve to drill a well for the irrigation of Leo Land Rock Field, given at the Town Council Chambers, Newmarket, New Hampshire, the 17th day of August in the year of our Lord 2005. Discussion, or Jim?
When we did went out to bid for the 3 wells that were the Fallis Brook, and in addition to that, we also threw the well for that Skilling and Sons would actually do, which were the low bidder, to do a well at Leo Landrock. So that price was the low bid of the 4 that we put together between Fallis Brook Watershed Committee and us. What this will do is allow us to be able to, A, use the water cannon to be, to immediately spray water on B to be able to keep turf. That's the primary thing right now, so allow us to do that. So that's what we're looking for, a well big enough to be able to do that. And then the next thing will be to prepare for us to be able to make the changes and adjustments that we're gonna need for B field for irrigation primarily, and for new turf and for sod. Probably that will be a little bit down the line, but immediately we could see the benefits of having the well for A field. We are right now talking with the school, working with the athletic director about a timetable and a plan to allow us to be able to put turf in A field that will be actually, I hope, applicated in October 1st, or around October, anywhere from October 1st to October 10th. so that it will be playable for baseball and allow us to be able to do that. There'll be a donation. Jim Rao has talked to us regarding Rick Millar, who is, owns a turf farm, and make a donation regarding that. So allow us to be able to have a regulation premier baseball field in the town.
Thank you very much. Counselor Hart.
Is Field A right now irrigated?
No, none of the fields are irrigated.
So this would also, the water will be used for both A or B?
That's correct. B field eventually will be the first one that will be irrigated, but we can use the water cannon on both of them immediately.
Does A field need substantial work or to make it drain well and all that stuff, or is it in pretty good shape and just the turf needs to be?
With these changes, and with Turfus, which we're right now experimenting with on C and D field, we believe that it will make a substantial difference.
What's the approximate value of the turf if it was donated, do you know?
Around $40,000.
Okay. Thank you, that sounds good.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2005-18? Counselor Morrison?
I move that we adopt this Resolution 2005-18.
Second?
Second it.
Counselor Hart, seconds. Brian Morrison, Counselor Brian Morrison, motions. Discussion? Administrator Dixon, can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Counselor Morrison.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Caprioli.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Number 11, Resolution 2005-19, withdrawal from the ambulance capital reserve for a new ambulance. I will read that. Resolution 2005-19, a resolution relating to the withdrawal from the ambulance capital reserve for a new ambulance. Whereas, the Capital Improvement Committee approved the ambulances to be acquired in 10 years instead of 14 years. And whereas reason for this change is that the maintenance costs skyrocket after 10 years. And whereas the equipment within an ambulance after 10 years short circuits the ambulance's electrical systems, which causes the ambulance to be out of service. And whereas the ambulance capital reserve has approximately $135,334.72 currently set aside for the acquisition for ambulances and equipment. Now therefore be it resolved that the Newmarket Town Council does hereby approve the release of up to $125,000 from the ambulance capital reserve for the purpose of acquiring a new ambulance to replace the 10-year-old ambulance, given at the Town Council Chambers, Newmarket, New Hampshire, the 17th day of August in the year of our Lord, 2005. Mr. Mulaski, I have a question for you. Are both our ambulances, and for lack of a better word, the box ambulances? I mean, the truck with the, okay.
Yep.
I just didn't know which, they both, apparently I know we had two, but I keep thinking I only see one, but, okay.
They look identical.
And are we purchasing a similar model?
Yeah. It'll be a Ford.
And is this a not to exceed 125,000?
That's correct.
And this comes with all the equipment in it?
Yeah.
Counselor Hart, and then Counselor Jarvis?
What's the age of the other one that we're not replacing?
10 years.
So we'll have to up the amount we're putting into the capital reserve fund to catch up. Okay, I just want to, I don't want to be spending money on repairs if we can get a better machine that's more available. So we just need to make sure we remember that when we do the capital budget, so we put $25,000 or $30,000 a year away, or probably 50, something like that, so. To catch up.
Counselor Jarvis?
Mine has been answered, thank you.
Any other questions from the council?
What are we doing with the old one?
What are we doing with the old one?
Trade in.
It's a
Gonna
trade.
go to Bosnia.
Really?
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you this. Serious.
No, I'm serious. Serious.
All right.
Really? Bosnia, wow.
Okay. And no more questions? Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2005-19?
So moved.
Thank you, Counselor Hart. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, Counselor Morrison. Discussion? Administrator Dixon, can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Counselor Morrison.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Caprioli.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next item on the agenda. Number 12, grant writer position, Recreation Department. Mr. Hill.
I brought this up right now because Eric's getting married in October, and I figure that he needs to know what's going on regarding his life, since that it started in October. What I'm asking for is the Newmarket Recreation Department requesting Town Council to authorize a continuation of the 2-year funded position. Funding would come through administrative grant fee allowances, private donations, and any balance would come for the Recreation Department's revolving account, which, by the way, we're at $59,000 right now as we speak in there. Year 2 would commence on October 4th in 2005. I tried to show you some of the things that he's done, but we have a lot of things that we want to do in the future. To date, and this includes the $100,000 that we have to accept, would be $168,000 total in grants in hand that we have. And then the second page, we did advertising. Al asked us to look at advertising to offset the cost of our brochure, and we brought $900 in. We're going to try that experiment again this next winter, because that's our biggest brochure. And again, with Club Chameleon donations, we have $6,802.62 that has already come in from that. But the most significant is, if you look at pending approval, these grants are already now in the pipeline. I'm just waiting any day to hear some of them. One's for $15,000, one's for $13,000, one's for $9,000, one's for $5,000 to be submitted. In fact, we're getting ready to do that. And then we went to the Field of Dreams. We put that in. Now I think we get a better idea of how that program works. I think we have a really good shot of being able to go for. That's a significant grant. He didn't put any amount of money. Could it be anywhere from $60,000 to $80,000? And then the food voucher program, other vouchers. We've just been we did something on a interesting idea. I thought of the concept, and we worked together with it, sending out to all the places, Hannaford Brothers and Walmart, and asking for food vouchers for Club Chameleon. And already we've had Walmart come back, and they're going to give us $500 in food vouchers. This is huge for us, because it allows us to have 2 trips for food. And then we're also working on other movies and the camp movies, et cetera, that are bringing revenue into the actual department. So there's really neat things. But I'd like to talk about a couple of the things that we're thinking about. Clay, can you just come up for a second and talk about that?
Jim and I have talked about this position, and one of the things that, I just did a rough calculation. You have $629,000 in grants on this agenda item. So the Newmarket is obviously successful at going after and acquiring grants, and what that does is it allows the town to offer the kind of services and community enhancement things that we would never be able to do. The idea that we would spend an additional $629,000 for some of these things without these grants is just ludicrous. And so by getting these grants, we're able to create things in this community that other communities can't even come close to because of our size. We're a community of, in my opinion, around 10,000. But we don't having a full-time grant person is something that you don't see until you get into larger cities. And the sole reason why a lot of people don't get grants is because they don't apply. And what this shows you, I think, is that if you apply, you can get them. And the amounts that we're getting are phenomenal. In a lot of cases, there's low competitiveness. And the only thing that holds me back from some of the grants that I'm aware of in terms of environmental grants, education outreach, anything in that realm that just crosses my desk is a sheer lack of time. And by being able to share some of this position in the planning office, I think that a lot of these grants can be applied for, and the NROC, for instance, has to sometimes issue second rounds because they can't give away the money, but because nobody has the time to fill out the forms. So Jim and I have talked about getting Eric to spend some time with me to go over some of the grants that that I've been not being able to go after just because I don't have the time. One of the other things I'd like to take off my plate so that I could continue focusing on some of the other priorities that the planning board has is the Riverwalk. The grant writer could continue doing that. As long as we continue to succeed, we will be up on. That's the kind of grant where if you do it once and you do it successfully, you're higher up on the priorities for being funded again. And that grant application takes a lot of time. By giving it to somebody like Eric, who's, if he can put together a successful land and water fund grant, he can do a coastal grant. And there's a lot of other coastal grants that we just haven't applied for, again, because of the time. So there are other options out there that I don't think we've ever really considered that kind of bridge this idea of passive recreation, environmental education, and the recreation department. And I just wanted to say that that's out there, and we've been talking about it.
So if you look at the investment that we put, it was like 42,084. It's a little bit higher now. I think we're definitely, the experiment's working. So what I'd like to do is have another year of the experiment and see where we go from there. We talked about a 2-year grant process and see where we're going to go with this. We definitely are getting our money's worth.
I would agree. Counselor Jarvis?
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the continuation of the 2-year grant-funded position. Funding would come from administrative grant fee allowances, private donations, and any balance would come from the Recreation Department's revolving account.
Is there a second?
Second.
Counselor Morrison seconds, Counselor Jarvis motioned. Any discussion? Seeing none, Al, can you please call the roll?
Counselor Hard.
Aye.
Counselor Morrison.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Caprioli.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2005
Nope.
Sorry, wrong one. Is discussion of Appledore engineering plan and design regarding Packers Falls Recreation Project.
This is good for me, guys. I kind of want to talk to you about the housing wise, and then talk about where we are, and then we can go from there. I'm sorry, public, if I don't have this, but this is kind of a moot thing to talk about, but I just want to show it to you. First of all, the pricing. That was the big question, was how much this was going to cost. Well, let's start with that. It was $481,000. That was rounded. It was 400 and, I can't get exactly the number. It's fine. The amount of money, and this doesn't include the ledge, et cetera, that they assumed it was going to, they estimated would be $480,810. Now, that was doable for the mere fact that we had $200,000 in cash, and probably with Eric's and my working, we could probably get enough people to give us in-kind service and do some construction work, et cetera. But we ran into a couple binds. And I have a pen here. This is the binds. First of all, when we proposed to the council, remember we had talked about this, putting a parking lot behind Rousseau's property. There was 2 or 3 things. First of all, there was an open space issue, because open space wanted to be able to sell off the Rousseau house to be able to recoup the money, around 200,000+, let's say, to allow them to be able to put it back, so of the projects that, the 2 projects that you actually have approved, plus the school's money that has been, promised of about $500,000. So that was an issue, because we had talked about possibly moving the building or doing something with it, and that wasn't an option, because they needed that money. So that was an issue for the open space, when they went back and said, whoa, we've got to think about this. The second part was when we went to Stanley and talked to Stanley, and I don't have a picture of it, but remember that in the very first plan we had parking back here. There was actually parking. And he said that if we built a parking lot here, that would be a deal breaker for him and he wouldn't sell his land. So that's kind of like stopped in your tracks. That's where we are. Then Frank Zabos came over and saw me, and he said, Jim, I love you, but if you do that, I'm probably going to have to talk to some lawyers. So that was the second part. I don't want to get sued. So that was 2 strikes. I'm not going for the 3rd strike. So then the other issue was that this is ledgy, and there's also some impacts of some wetlands. We were surprised at the amount of wetlands. When we first of all had done the initial boundary marking, et cetera, we saw that there were some wetlands, but we weren't aware that it was a significance as it was, and there was a piece, see right here, in this bottom part of this property, that was there, was gonna impact it. And there was also a piece over here that was gonna be impacted. So that was something significant, because we would have to probably apply for a wetlands permit to be able to do that. So that was gonna be an issue. The other thing is that Stanley had an issue with that if there was that he had to really think about it, that with a field that close to his property, that it would be impinging upon his privacy, and he was concerned about that. We're still talking about that. So with those two things, I also talked to Appledore of looking at a possibility of creating a field down on this end, because we had already talked about this, about a field here. And I wanted to put a field in that would not be full size, that would basically be 70–80% of the size itself, but this also posed an issue of parking. Thinking that possibly this could be an issue with parking, I asked them to consider looking at parking as an issue on this road, which you're right, none of that was discussed beforehand. This is a brand new option that I'm laying on the table before you, saying, is this even a possibility? Let me tell you the reason why. 3 reasons. First of all, this would allow us to be able to, one, not lose $100,000 because it would be within the plan scope of the actual LWCF grant. It would be able to build a field, which, by the way, we have the match for the $50,000 from Stanley's property, from the match that we have from Russo's property, and the match that we have from Leary property. We wouldn't have to even spend any money, but we still need to do something with this. The other thing was, this whole area was completely clear now. There's nothing there except for probably about 40 trees, because it's completely clear because of the staging area. That when I went out, I said, "Oh my gosh, all the trees are gone." So it made sense that this would be a place that we could basically do, some stumping and some stuff there, put some sand and put some loam in there. We could have a field. In the beginning, I thought of a green space. I'm still considering that as a green space. It may be smart possibly to put irrigation, because you wouldn't have to worry about any type of, it will keep it green. If you keep it green, then it's going to I don't know how that's going to impact the wells. I asked Leo to talk about it, if you have any questions about that, because I went and talked to him too, to give him his input about this. There's a well going to be here, there's a well going to be here, and there's a well going to be here. We have to be within 300 feet, but as long as we have jurisdiction of it, doesn't mean that we can't build anything. As long as we have jurisdiction of this area, which that meets those needs, and he can talk a little bit more about that. So here we are. I looked at this and said, okay, with the amount of money that we have here, it doesn't seem feasible. Let's build this. We can easily build this with $100,000. We could basically put some money into this. Well, we already have the money for the match anyways, and take care of 3 things. One is I desperately need a soccer field, so this will allow me to do something with soccer. 2 is we started looking at C&D field as a possibility, and we redid, I don't know if you saw in the plan, C&D field, which is over on Nichols Ave, made them more baseball friendly, baseball softball friendly. So that will take some of that problem off of here. It's not a cure-all. It is not what the master plan recommended, you're right. However, it makes a bridge from us to get to where we're going to be going with the school, and that's why I asked Chris to talk about that a little bit, about how important that is, because we're still ways out. We could be on this field next year.
Can I ask a couple questions, just some comments
Sure.
that, Mr. Prescott had made earlier. I remember very distinctly in public that we said we would stay 200 feet away from Falls Brooks, and we are doing that, is that correct?
This is 200 feet right here, yes.
We are that
Yeah.
field is 200 feet
Yeah.
away from Falls Brooks.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I've been
I
reminded of it.
I asked them
Okay.
to do that.
So-
There's a 100-foot buffer just for the road.
Right.
And that's from that point here. We are.
Because for some reason, he thinks we said 250 feet, or maybe a plan had shown 250 feet, but we kind of committed to 200 feet because we
Yeah.
said it in public.
This is
And we are
200.
doing that,
This is
okay.
200 feet.
Okay,
This is not 200. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know what this is. I don't have an answer to this. It turns.
Parking lot?
It turns, I'm not sure. This can also be moved back a little bit. They just put it in there.
Yeah, can
But
you-
I don't know what that is.
Can we get the answer to that?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Emergency road, that was gonna be used as an emergency exit now. Is there an emergency exit from that area?
Well, the only emergency exit we have right now is there's an emergency road. If you notice with your plan here, I'm just
Yep.
gonna focus on this, because that's basically what
Yep.
you have, because this now is disappeared. There's an emergency road from here to this field, so in case someone got hurt, they could drive into here.
Okay.
And then there's also, you see a turnaround here to
Yep.
go in and out.
Okay.
This right now, we measured on the side, it's 22 feet wide. It's
Okay.
big enough for 2 cars to go. If we had to do
Okay,
some.
but I think the issue was that we weren't gonna use that road unless it
Yes.
was an emergency exit.
That's right. So this is a drastic.
So that is a big change?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it is. We need to even discuss to determine, that's right.
And you don't think there'll be any blasting?
Well, no, there is a rock here.
Okay.
That could be made to go away, or we could make this, and the reason why I'm thinking this is because I don't want to impinge upon the wetlands that's right there to the right. You see, we could move this back, we could make this a bit smaller, we could be creative with this parking area.
So it seems like there's about 40 spaces in the parking
Well,
lot?
that's what I'm hoping.
But if we have to cut 6 to do what we
Sure.
gotta do, that's...
I think that you'd find, though, in learning this is Rick still here? We skimped on the parking with Beanie Hopcroft and made a big mistake. I think if anything, we should not do that. We need to creatively think about that, because what did we end up with? We had to make a whole bit more space, because it didn't have it didn't have 40 spaces.
Okay.
It would be gravel, again, it would all be gravel. I went to open space, talked to the plan, they voted on the plan, that was unanimously voted on, and that they saw that. I went to Leo and showed him the plan, now he has it in his hand. If you have any questions about how it's gonna impact Fallsbrook, I'm sure that he'd be glad to talk about that. And then we
Okay.
you just
And the
tell
other
where to go.
concern, where the dogs weren't allowed, but
I don't know.
I don't
know
remember
why.
that. I
None
thought
of-
they
none
would
of
be
our
on
parks-
leash.
None of our parks have dogs allowed. None of the recreation
Right,
parks
but I mean,
allow-
when we did that, this wasn't a park yet. So what I'm saying is, I thought they were allowed on leash, but I'll have to look. There was so many properties. I don't remember saying no to any areas except really small areas.
And I don't care, but what I'm thinking is this, when we talked about this, and we had talked about this with the Conservation Commission, we still have to go in front of, talk to Conservation next week, is they wanted us to make a buffer here, something to keep the kids from running. I have no problem, because you notice the entrance to the
Yep.
fields up here is to run a buffer here. If people want to walk down and walk their dogs, that'd be fine, they're not going to be anything with this park. I could put a fence up if you want, I'd rather have it natural. I think what's going to happen is well, this is a green space, as the schools come online, this will allow us to be able to have a practice field, this will allow us to have a picnic area, this will allow us to have the Frisbee golf area to be able to play Frisbee golf. I mean, it's not a huge place to be able to do it, but it's not small. It's about the same size as Beanie Hopcroft. It's about that size.
Okay, Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Looking at what you've got there, and not knowing offhand what the status is on the Zashik, I'm guessing it's a purchase and sales in place?
Yeah, the purchase sales has been signed. I think if I go back with him with what I have, I think it's a done deal. I believe it.
Is there a way of getting out of that?
There is, but there's also a way to, I talked to the open space, and they were thinking, their thinking is that's not a bad place to be. I mean, this is it'd be great for a part of the match. We'd get our money back, in essence.
What I'm thinking is if we got out of that one and sold the Russo property, we'd have monies to start looking elsewhere for land.
The Russo property, though, the money's already earmarked for the other projects you have. The problem is that you wouldn't be able to take the money for $256,000 or $250,000, because it's gonna go in either the school money, or the Nordstrom. All that money is now spoken for, with the sale of Russo. Where?
So rec department,
We'd be out of the loop. we'd be at square one again.
And we're forgetting what it was all about.
And we'd also walk away with losing 100,000. That's be another issue.
We've been doing this for 3 years.
Yeah, we'd be right back.
I think the athletic community's been pretty patient. Brian Hart?
But if we didn't buy Rousseau, we'd save $45,000 that could go to another property.
Mean
Zajac. And then we would still have some money, $25,000 in the water supply land protection fund, so we could use that to underwrite some of the cost of Rousseau, so that frees up more money. So we would have $75,000 more. And if the school ends up getting a purchase and sales, we can put the extra money in there and accelerate the development of athletic fields near a school site, which might be a better solution anyway, because I have a problem with 40 cars driving that close to Fallsbrook, and that's my biggest problem. It's also, could you point where the wells were, because I was looking down.
There's one up here,
Actually, the potential locations of the wells.
One here, one way up, one here.
Oh.
Why don't you show me? You're the one that told me.
It kind of follows this road about maybe 100 to 200 feet over. It gets closer down here.
This is the one that's 425 feet from the Quack's property or any other property. The other one is out here, third one out here, which is 300 feet from the Leary property here. So basically, this one here, you'd be limited to, if it went into our public water system rather than the Falls Brook, limited to 80 gallons a minute for the 300-foot radius. The other two wells are exceeding the 400 square foot radius for our public water system. Therefore, there's no limitation on how much you could draw out. But this one here we just couldn't crunch them up too close to each other. We'd be probably going into the same vein. So basically, I don't know the effect. The statute says you have to have control over 300 or 400 feet. And I guess if we own this, we have control, but I don't know when we go. We'll know within a few weeks how much water is probably available out of there. And when we go to the state for either putting in a Falls Brook or tying in directly, they have some concerns about what is happening in that 400-foot radius or 300-foot radius. I don't know.
Administrator Dixon?
You know, this project was changed, Jim and I looked at it, it's basically, he has enough money, $200,000 to do one field, period. Not develop the whole complex and $480,000 at this time. He's got $200,000 maximum to work with. So the plan came about and made sense because basically we'll recoup what we've expended already to buy land as the match. And then he has $100,000 to do his green space field right now. And we thought that area up there at Zajac would be good to hold in reserve for a future soccer field if possible. It would make sense not to just have that one small field there, but in the long run have the two to function as a recreational facility. Also, with the Zajac property, the Russo property, the Leary property, is going to be lots of opportunity for trails, maybe picnic areas, things like that in through there. So it can really become a recreational use area open.
Madam Chairman, can I have Chris just talk a second about school? Because I think that, first of all, was intimately involved as a chairman of the 10-year master plan, which I think is important that you hear from him, and then talk about how this would or would not make sense as far as the school's next step here, so.
Yep, sure.
Yeah, it's unfortunate this didn't turn out the way we all hoped it would initially. The need hasn't changed, and I think that's important to keep in mind. The council responded really well to the need, and I know you're very conscious of it. Jim has talked a lot about the steps that he's going to take to rebuild A and B fields, which are two of our primary school playing fields. And we still need excess capacity, and this meets a need at least in the short term. The master plan was phrased in terms of short-term needs and long-term plans. And so this is a part of the short-term plan, and if we can make it work, I think it makes a lot of sense to try and make it work. I'm not at all sorry and have no regrets at all that it didn't work out as intended. I think it was worthwhile to acquire this land anyway, even if it's just held in conservation forever. I know there were development plans in line for this area, and keeping it the way it is, rather than having it developed, I think is an acceptable alternative if we can't go ahead and do our ball fields there. The upshot of all this, though, is that it increases the pressure, which I think is appropriate on the school board to try to get ball fields built as part of the school project, and just ups the ante a little bit in terms of trying to get the new school built. We had some positive developments, I think, last night. Ethel was there. We met with the school design committee, met with the engineer from the State Department of Education, Office of Building Aid, and this is the guy who has the final sign-off authority on whether or not you get building aid and what you're going to get aid for and what you're not. I had been estimating that we would be eligible for state aid on 36 acres of buildable land, and he said no, it's going to be 42, because they look at the maximum build-out capacity, which is 1,200, which is good news. So there's going to be a little bit of additional leverage for the town council's investment of money in that. We also talked to him about what we can do to increase the amount of land over and above the limit in the regulation that we can get reimbursement for. And he said, well, if it's part of your educational specifications, which is a document you use to define exactly what it is you need for your program, you can always come in and ask for a waiver. I told him that we have a recreation master plan that we've defined that was developed through a public process. It's been adopted by the school board as a planning document as well as by the council. He suggested that put us ahead of the game, and so I think we're going to put together a proposal and go and ask for as much building aid money as we can for our matching money and maximize the leverage of the investment in future playing fields facilities. I want to remind everybody that what's proposed for the site is 2 full-size soccer fields, 2 softball fields, a full-sized baseball field, a track, and there will be additional land available, we believe, for another baseball field if need be, or any other recreational amenity you might choose to build. That is all with no overlays, no overlapping, each a distinct facility. Another thing, this gets us off the point of this land a little bit. We did talk about, because we have a combined facility, middle school and high school, the state grants aid based upon the largest square footage requirement. So for a gym space, for example, I think it's 160 square foot per child for a high school, 140 for a middle school. But because you have a combined facility, you're going to build it at 160 and have aid available for that, so you're getting more bang for your buck, again, which I think is going to be an advantage in the long run for recreational amenities. So the school has an RFP out now for Phase 2 environmental study of the sites that we have in mind. The responses will be back on August 29th to that. And we'll be going ahead and doing our evaluation of the properties that we need to do to satisfy DES. We have one PNS that's been in the hands of a property owner for about 5 weeks, and we have another one going out this week. And in the meantime, we're continuing to talk to people about land. So I think the school board recognizes that because of the unfortunate way this has turned out, with the best of intentions on everybody's part, that it increases the pressure on us to get this deal done, get the school done. And we're certainly going to do what we can to, within reasonable and sound planning, to get the ball fields done as quickly as we can, assuming that we get this warrant passed in March at all. So that's really all I have to say, unless you have questions.
Counselor Hart?
I don't have a question for Chris, sorry.
I thought better of it.
Anybody have a question for Chris?
I want to say one more thing about the level 2 assessment. We're actually doing stuff that's over and above what the state requires us to do, so that we can make sure we satisfy community concerns that might arise with one or more of the sites. We had Bill Arcieri, who's an environmental engineer, and Cliff Chase, who's a chemist, look it over before it went out. So we think we're going to be able to satisfy community concerns when that process is complete.
Thank you very much. Do you have a question now?
Clay, if maybe you can answer, or maybe Jen or someone that's had a planning board experience. What would, if this was private land, what would the setback requirement be for a parking lot from adjacent land? Because we're definitely farther than that right now.
The parking lot setbacks are covered in our site plan review regulations, and they require parking lots to be compliant with setbacks. This is in the R1 district, so it would be 25 feet off the top of my head.
And so the topo lines disappeared behind the parking lot, at least on the one I have. But is it really steep there, going up to the neighbors?
Yes.
Or it is? Right. Okay.
Is there any other questions for Jim or anyone else? Jim, when would you be back to us with your best?
This is what I recommend. You have the September 7th meeting we're talking about. We'll know something about, because the wells will be drilled on the 30th, right, Leo? Around.
I'd be a couple weeks after that, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Probably the third week of September.
Okay. So you'll know what you have there. I can go ahead and get the measurements. Talk to Appledore if you want me to do that. If you want me to come up with a more creative way for parking, I'd have no problem with that. If you want me to look at that as a possibility, just tell me what you need me to do, and we'll do it.
I'd like to see, as best as you possibly can, just address some of the concerns that we talked about, that Mr. Prescott brought up, and come back to us with, I don't want to call it final, because you know that could change.
Yep, sure.
Recommended.
Your best recommendation.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so we can continue this to before the vote of the approval of the funds.
On the 7th.
September 7th. The other thing we're not going to, though, know is those wells are meaningful or not.
That's right. That may be something you want to just consider. I mean, that would be, I know that water is incredibly important, so I mean, that definitely is a factor here.
When do we have to have that?
I think that by September 30th, we'll have it.
So we could
We're-
actually change that up.
To the second workshop. That'll give me more time to do that.
To the workshop, the funding, the LWCF funds.
Yep.
Do it both together.
Yep. We'd have that by that time, sure.
All right, so why don't we need a motion to change the motion. Or we need a motion to continue this to the September workshop and
And to authorize.
to act on the funding at the September workshop, too.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Or make a comment? Just.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you'll be able to address my concern of the cars driving on the road, but in terms of the parking lot, if you can, the runoff from the parking lot would need to be controlled, and I know the town's gonna have site plan review, and although we don't have to go before the planning board, I'm sure on this one we might, or we should, and, you know, the best management practices and systems to collect that water and route it away from Falls Brook or treat it before it gets into any surface water would probably be helpful.
I just had a question, too.
Sure.
Hey, Jim, is there any way we could do parking on Maston Drive on the opposite side? Oh, Leo's shaking his head no.
They're all going to be here in about 5 minutes. They're not going to appreciate that.
It's not live, this is pre-recorded. No way.
I don't think so. It's too narrow.
Very narrow. Especially that corner.
When we parked out there, and cars were going, you know, people were coming home or coming, it was like, whoop, by the way. I'll make them.
Quick question, too.
Yeah, Councilor Jerry Hammond?
Can
Jim.
you tell me the issues make sure I have the issues that you want me to address? One is the distance of the field.
And parking from Falls Brook.
Yep.
Whether we absolutely need to do blasting to acquire parking or not.
Those are his three main.
Well, an emergency exit, but I think we addressed that. His issue was that now it's a road, not emergency exit.
And yours about appropriate runoff. Okay.
And then Councilor Jerry Hamel had a question for you, Jim.
Yes.
I just want to get clear on something. I don't think I really got the answer earlier, but if you were going to build the one field on the Leary property and the other properties didn't exist, would you lose that grant monies? You'd still have the grant monies.
I think that we need to keep Russo's because we own Russo's. But I think without Isaac, we would be okay. Because we're not going to build it. We talked about future building. I think that it has some merit to it in a long-term plan, because LWCF likes to have that long-term plan. The more that land that the LWCF manages, the happier they are.
But if you didn't have either of those other properties, you still wouldn't lose
I would say
that
Russo.
grant money.
I would say Russo's would be probably important, but
Well, if you're not going to go with a future field, Russo's not even important.
You could put a conservation easement on the back land and use that as the match, and then sell the land as a 7-acre house lot, which would have more value than just the house with 2 acres.
I was toying with the idea of selling the whole thing, try to recoup some money and
That's what I meant.
start look elsewhere, and the backland.
I was just hoping that we wouldn't sell it so someone could develop it, because then it would kind of defeat one of the things that people were upset about, which is impacts on Fallsboro. Potentially.
We need money for rec land, so.
I agree, Jerry. If you think I wanted it to turn out this way, no, that's not.
And there's a couple pieces now that are, it seems like a day late and a dollar short right now. There are 2 pieces that we're talking to people about. But the problem is that I was real honest with them. I said, we can talk, but you don't have the money. There's no money in the open space now. It's all been spoken for.
Okay, so can we have a motion to continue this to the September workshop, which would be September 21st, and to continue the LWCF funds approval to that also, to the 21st, just so we're doing it both in the same meeting.
Make that motion.
Thank you, Counselor Hart. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Counselor Morrison. Any discussion? Administrator Dixon, can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Hart?
Aye.
Counselor Morrison?
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis?
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Caprioli?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next item, 14, continued discussion on Resolution 2005-12, withdrawal from the revaluation capital reserve for the 2005-2006 assessments. And I'd just like to ask Administrator Dixon if got what Counselor Hart had an issue with, so that his,
I don't know if I
Answer.
got, I did, okay.
Yep. This is very helpful.
so, do we?
I wasn't the only vote, there were 4 of us, so.
Well, I just, because you brought it up.
Yeah.
Any other concerns or questions for you guys regarding this? Counselor Jarvis?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2005-12, a resolution relating to withdrawal from the revaluation capital reserve for 2005-2006 assessments.
Do you have the dollar amount?
It's 20, well, you got it right there. We're withdrawing 21,440.
$21,446.52.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Motion, Counselor Jarvis, second, Counselor Hart. Any discussion? Administrator Dixon, can you please call the roll?
Right. Your motion, Counselor Jarvis, references the adoption of Resolution 205-12, right? Not just, okay.
Did I not say that?
I don't know if you did.
Yeah.
Did she?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Counselor Morrison.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Caparoni.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you for giving us the memo.
Not a problem.
Item 16, discussion on water ban. I believe Dana asked for, or mentioned to me to put this on the agenda, and it came up kind of at the last meeting.
We got one more.
Oh, discussion on ordinance 2005-10, urban boundary. And Mr. Mitchell.
I'm back. One thing I just want to clear up. Any town project has to go to the planning board. It's mandatory. The question is whether the planning board can assert any kind of actual authority over it. And the answer to that question is no, provided it's a governmental use. Nevertheless, the town is required to be at the planning board 60 days prior to construction.
Excuse me, gentlemen, we can't really hear over you, sorry.
Just want you guys to know that, so that, because people can use that statute to hold up a town project if the town doesn't appear before the planning board.
Thank you.
Welcome. The urban service boundary. We've talked about this quite a few times, and we talked about the issue related to water for a very long time. The planning board was charged with, during a joint meeting with the council, to go ahead and review this as one of the options for getting a handle on the expansion of our facility with respect to capacity and demand. I've handed it out before, but I'm just going to hand it out again. This is not something new that I'm dropping on you tonight. There's one additional chart we'll go over, but everything else has been given to you before. Pass them around. George and Rob, the chair and the vice chair of the planning board, are here, and Leo is here as well. 3 members of the planning board who we're all very intimately familiar with this process. In order for the planning board to determine how to grab hold of this issue, we had to take 2 questions on that have, to our knowledge, have never been formally challenged, and that is, what is the capacity of our system? The second question is, what is the demand of our system? And then the final question is, given those 2 numbers, what, if anything, do we have left over to allocate out to people that are wanting to hook onto our system? Using the data for years and years, you can see on the very last page, this is the simplest graph to explain this information that we could come up with. The planning board arrived at a figure of a safe yield. Unfortunately, this graph is in color. The straight line is the planning board's adopted safe yield, 30-day safe yield, which represents the data in several reports that are the first 7 pages of this document. It's a conglomeration of all those reports that have estimated the withdrawal capacities of the Sewell and Bennett well. And that is approximately 0.5 million gallons per day, or 15.3 million gallons per month. The spiked line is the monthly demand since the year 2000. And so as you can see, several times we exceed our safe yield, and at several times we go below the safe yield. The date that the demand falls off and kind of flattens out is the implementation of stage 4 water ban. So there's an effect. So then the question became, all right, now the planning board charged me with finding out what is out there in terms of what's been approved. We've already discussed at length what the process was prior to this ordinance. We're not here to discuss how things were done in the past. Basically what happened, people went to the water supply department and said, is there capacity? Water department said, yes, there was. They came back to the planning board. Planning board said, what'd they say? They said there was, so the planning board approved the project. The planning board has some concerns with that process and understood George Laney's position of not wanting to be the person to determine whether people should be hooked up to the system or not. And it turns out there's case law to support that the planning board is the one who determines whether people should be hooked up onto the system or not. And that was done in a case in Concord where the planning board said, go onto the system. We think there's capacity. The town council in Concord or the city council tried to say, no, you can't go onto the system. Supreme Court overturned the council's decision, said that authority rests with the planning board, not the council. So based on that case law, it's our opinion that the planning board is the one who's properly vested with the authority to deal with this issue on who's going to be hooked onto the system. If you turn to page 10 of the package I've sent you, this is the new chart. These are the 13 approvals that I've identified that are outstanding and are not hooked up to the water supply system. You see the remaining units in Durrell, the remaining units in Bennett, the expansion at Lamprey Health Centers that's being built now, the recently approved Wentworth Douglas Health Facility in the 108 office complex that's being built right now, 10,000 square feet of additional space in that same facility, 57 units of age-restricted housing on Wadley Falls, which is being built right now, 6 units in the Cervigy, which is relatively minor, 8 units at Marcel's Landing, which again is relatively minor, but not being built, 4 units across the street here at Beach Street, which to my knowledge only 1 is occupied, 8,000 additional square feet of office space that's already been built and is currently being leased up. Joyce's Kitchen will be approved to build a new facility next to Brooks. Chinburg, 10 units of rentals or owner apartments basically in the Selectwood building, and then Chinburg's office building at 7,200 square feet on the top floor of Selectwood. Total demand of those uses based on DPW figures, which are more exact than DES, and where DPW doesn't have figures, I've used DES capacity figures, comes out to 40,000 gallons per day. So, adding that flat line on page, whatever, the last page, to this 40,000 gallons per day, the planning board, in drafting the ordinance, found, as you will see in the ordinance, that the demand of the system is 0.47 million gallons per day. So, remember I told you that 0.5 million gallons per day is the capacity, and 0.47 is the demand when you add in all these approved and unbuilt. So there's 30,000 gallons per day of capacity left over. And this is in a stage 4 water system. So the planning board has respectfully submitted an ordinance to you that does not allow anyone else to hook up to the water system except for the capacity reservation of 30,000 gallons per day, which is targeted toward the milled redevelopment location. So what this ordinance in effect does is says, here's our safe yield, here's our demand, here's what's left over, and here's where the planning board is saying or recommending that the council say by the adoption of the ordinance, here's where that capacity should be reserved until we find a new supply. This is a zoning map of the town of Newmarket. Everybody's familiar with this? Based on the existing pipes, the blue represents where the urban service area is, basically. These are the properties that have pipes going in front of them or are targeted for immediate expansion areas. Up here where the wells are, over here where the business areas. This blue part is really a long-range plan. This is the capacity reservation area, which are the mill properties and the Ottoman building and the parking lots. It's not clear to me, NCDC is still discussing the use of those parcels, but the idea would be that that would be the capacity reservation area. Before I get any farther, does anybody have any questions on what has taken place? Or what, before I just keep going?
Does this does not factor into the mills?
Yes, it does.
Which one, how? Or are they already approved for the water that they were approved 400 years ago?
No, you're right. There isn't any saved for the wells. There's 30,000 gallons
30,000.
left over that is
Basically.
whatever gets proposed for in the Ottoman building area or the mills.
Oh, okay.
Is that right?
Correct.
Yes, basically. If you look on the ordinance, which, I'm sorry, it doesn't have a page number, which is in your package, you see that the planning board has proposed definitions for safe yield, demand, and reserve capacity. This is the best available information that the planning board has to arrive at these numbers. This ordinance is scheduled to end in a year. It's scheduled to, at that point, the planning board will be in discussions with the council to determine whether there's a new supply or not. If there isn't a new supply, it'll more than likely be extended. If there is, then the ordinance will be extended, and probably, my recommendation to the board has been that we extend the ordinance in a different format. And that's kind of a long-range discussion, but where the planning board and the council can target areas for expansion of the facilities, rather than let people come in and say, hey, I want to expand the facility over here because I got a great idea for a development. The planning board and the council would say, these are the areas where we would like to expand our lines and our facilities, and that's where we want to see development grow. And that would be, off the top of my head, to our two major business area zones that are not currently developed, as well as some of the other reason you would expand water and sewer are go hand in hand sometimes, but we haven't discussed the sewer facility issue yet. Right now, we're dealing with water. But it's possible to adopt a similar ordinance for the wastewater facilities as well.
Counselor Hart?
This is the current form that the planning board recommended?
Yes.
Okay. And there will be a description of the parcels that are in the boundary or a map, because it's a little, I mean, I know that it might be good for the actual tax parcel maps to be listed into the ordinance.
If I don't think the planning board's intent or my intent was that you would adopt this ordinance tonight. Yeah, and so
Have a public hearing.
I'm kind of throwing this on you. However you want the map to be, I'm happy to draft it. And in fact, I still need to talk to George Laney about removing some of those parcels that are or are not served by water. Right now, the intent of the blue is that the blue would be the areas that are currently have water lines in front of them. So there's some question still down here and up in this area. But the reservation area would definitely need the tax map and lot numbers. And the final map would have the annotation of the lot numbers on it as well. But that's to give you the rough idea.
Counselor Jerry Hamel?
Do I guess I would understand that this would encourage people also to, let's say, get off the system and drill a well, even though they were within that boundary, or maybe somebody doing some developing, being denied access to the system, would just be encouraged to go ahead and drill wells, so as they could continue with their plans. Is that what I'm understanding?
I think that would be a decision that the individual person would have to make, but that could be one of the trickle-down effects.
Well, I think it would probably have to come.
If they wanted to develop their property, yes.
Because currently, if you've got services in front of your property, you're required to hook up, right? So we'd have to change that requirement. Yeah.
This changes that.
It does change that. Okay.
Yeah, there are some other issues that there's some other things that I can talk about. The there's been some question in the past about the status of existing water permits and attachments to the system. This ordinance attempts to capture that issue. And if you look at section 707E, it talks about the water department regulations. In the water department regulations, there are 3 stages. There's preliminary approval, and then there's water permit. And the 3rd stage is kind of, you apparently are allowed to hook up. There's not really a permit, you're just granted the ability to hook up. And there's no formal description of that stage in the regulations. The regulations require people that have these outstanding permits to approve them on a yearly basis. This ordinance would stand and would now require those people to come to the planning board and renew their conditional use permit and get a conditional use permit. And so instead of going to the water department to get the permit approvals or the preliminary approval letters renewed on a yearly basis, which is what they all should be doing, they would now come to the planning board to renew their permit on the conditional use permit. So that's one procedure. That kind of goes away from what your question was asking, but if people near or abutting the system want to expand their ability to use water, they would either have to assist in getting a new supply on the system, or they would have to find their own supply. And that would be something that they would have to deal with the planning board on.
I guess the question has come to me a few times in the past, but an existing water user, large or small, now, already hooked up, what if they just opted right now to say, hey, I think I'd like to attempt a well and disconnect from the system? Now, would that be allowed? Would this, it sounds like it would be encouraged, because we're starting to look at the amount of water that we have and in the way it's distributed, that you would be encouraging that sort of behavior.
This ordinance doesn't change anybody's existing right to use the water. It interferes with people's ability to expand their use of the water. I would submit to you that being in a stage 4, if a stage 4 water ban doesn't encourage people to put wells in, this ordinance isn't going to change that. And that's the frustration I've been hearing, is that why are we on a stage 4 water ban and hooking people up to the system? And that's a question I can't answer. I say because we have no ordinance that tells people they can't hook up to the system. It's, well, what happens when we run out of water? And I say, I don't know. I assume that DES will step in just like they did in Seabrook and say, that's it, moratorium. And the DES will put it on. And then you'll have to wait and prove to them that you can expand. And that's what Seabrook just went through for the last couple of years. I think they've been fighting with that.
And this, I was going to wait to bring this up later on, but some of the reason we're talking so much about water tonight is we need to be at our solution and doing it 2 years from now, not still working on it and looking for solutions. We need to make that happen. And when we discuss Falls Brook later, there's going to be other concerns that are going to come up, but I just want to share that with the council. We need to be doing something now. Administrator Dixon and then Councilor Hart.
I would just say that I think the council's got to be aware, the planning board's got to be aware that most ordinances I've worked with that involve water systems or sewer systems, particularly water, do not allow people to disconnect or to abandon the public system within the service area. If that becomes part of what we're doing, then we're going to be hurting the whole system, because what we are embarking upon is going to be expensive. Water is going to be expensive. The number of users will determine the rate, and as well as the quantities that they use. So we have a very small service system. So if we are embarking upon a course where we're going to say we're going to encourage existing people in the service area to disassociate themselves with the public system, the infrastructure's in place, the pipeline's going by their property. Most ordinances in other towns would require if that were to happen, that they pay the minimum. The minimum would be the cost of the capital amortization, okay, of both your infrastructure and your water supply. Because, like I said, let's say you have 800 users in the system, 400 of them decide to disassociate themselves. There's only one way that water rate goes. That's right through the roof without even any improvement.
Definitely a delicate
Issue.
issue.
This ordinance provides nobody with the authority to disconnect from the system. It does not change the existing ability of someone to say, I'm disconnecting from the system, or I'm putting a well on my property. This ordinance says no one new hooks up to the system until a new supply is identified.
Counselor Jerry Hamel?
I think the point,
You called on me after Al.
I did?
Yeah. You did.
Okay.
I'm
Go
out
ahead.
of turn.
I guess
But
so.
you can go ahead, Jerry. I'll write a note, so go ahead.
I think the point I was trying to make was what Al just said, but also, without your saying it, and this has happened before, if a person is denied the capability of hooking up, then they can go the other route without you writing it or not. And we've had that happen with a sewer moratorium back, I'm going to say it was in the 80s, on Exeter Road and out in those areas, and a person was denied the opportunity to expand, put in a septic system. Shortly thereafter, the moratorium was lifted. I guess once you realize that it can be done. So wells could be put in by people that are actually on the, fronting the system, and which does deteriorate the whole system by, if you did identify a water source, here's people that may have wells but yet be fronted on the system. Now, how do you get them to hook up after the fact? I don't know if you follow what I'm saying.
I do, and I hate to answer a question with a question, but how would you respond to the people who are, I'm trying to speak with the plan, and I'm sure there are probably going to be some people that are going to stand up and say the exact same thing or tell me to shut up when I'm wrong. But the question that we're getting is, why are you hooking people up to a system if we're in a stage 4? So what's the answer to, how many more people do you want to, how far do you want to expand the user base before people say, hey, we're in a stage 5? Wait, you don't have a stage 5. Yeah, it is. Go turn on your tap. There's nothing there. I mean, what's going on with that? I guess that's kind of what I got from the planning board, and I did the same thing. I said, I don't know. How many more people are going to be hooked up to this system before a new supply is identified?
Counselor Hart?
I would propose that it be a 2-year start, not a 1-year, because if we get Falls Brook and we start working on the wells, the permitting process isn't fast, and I'd be surprised if they were online in a year and being used. And I'd rather not have to rush to make an extension, and if we miss it, then someone sneaks in an application and they get the right to use water because it's been submitted while the ordinance didn't exist. So I don't see why, unless there was a specific reason you were thinking of 1 year, that 2 years wouldn't be better. And then right now, we're basically using the water ban at stage 4 to prevent the possibility of no water coming out of the tap. But once we pass this, wouldn't it make sense if there was a way to reduce the availability of the capacity reservation based on the conditions of the system? Meaning that if we were in a long drought and we're in stage 4 of the water ban, it drops to 15,000 gallons.
I could certainly write something that.
I'm just wondering if that's something that we should consider. Maybe it's just too complicated and we better get our butts in gear and get something solved in the next year and a half.
Yeah, I think that's what the planning board is saying, the latter.
I agree, it's just, that's not that easy.
Yeah, and they, I think that the planning board is well aware of that. It's just that, I don't know if you've caught the last meeting. I'd be happy to give you a DVD of it, but, the planning board caught a lot of heat from people, rightfully so, who don't understand how this is going. There's a lot at play here. There's a lot of vested rights and a lot of people to use our water system, and we have to respect those people before we start hooking new people up. And I will tell you that in preliminary discussions with developers, I've told them their concern has been, what's the status of your water supply? And so we're in stage 4. We're exploring a lot of opportunities. And the things that I've pitched and have not been summarily rejected or laughed at is that if they want to put in a community system in their system, that they would lay the pipes so that we could connect up. And when our system had the supply, that then they would just shut down their community system and turn on the nozzle, because most developers don't want community systems because it's an unknown, more so than the municipal system. The municipal system is managed more efficiently. It doesn't require the need for a homeowners association, but at the same time, people driving into Newmarket to look at a new house and they see stage 4 water ban and somebody, that's not a good selling point. So there have been discussions that I've had with developers who have not been thrown out by the idea that they would lay the infrastructure in advance, and that if they had to put in a community system to get water for the people in their development, they would, and then turn it off once our supply came online. And that's something the planning board has the authority to do.
Clay actually said what I was going to say, but I'll just say it again quickly, is that we have a responsibility to provide water to the people in this town, and who is going to be responsible and who is going to answer that question, why is the water not coming out of my faucet? So I think we owe it to the people in this town to pass this ordinance. And some of your concerns, Jerry, it is an ordinance that will only be 1 year. And after 1 year, we can look at it and say, where is our capacity now? Where are we now? How can we change it? I don't think a lot of people will start digging their own wells that are already hooked up on it, but it will in the next, if we pass it in that year, it will mean if we don't have the capacity to give you water, you are going to have to provide your own water. But although that's a hard decision, we're making it so that all the other people that are hooked up to the water are guaranteed to have their water still. So that'll do.
Thank you, Jen. Administrator Dixon?
Yeah, I was just going to address the 1-year issue. Clay, this is essentially nothing more than a moratorium, what we're talking about. And any time there's a moratorium, I believe the state requires that it's no more than 1 year in duration and reviewed at the end of that year as to whether or not it's, appropriate to continue it. So you can't go with a 2-year or a 3-year moratorium, or you would be in court. Is my interpretation of that. Would you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't actually, because although it has the effect of a moratorium, it is not intended to be adopted under the growth management statutes. What you're talking about is the growth management statutes. This is not meant, and this is something that I'm obviously going to probably be spending an hour or two with FX discussing, but the authority to adopt this ordinance, I think, comes from different locations in the statutes, and I don't think it amounts to a growth moratorium because it's not a limitation on your building permit. It's just a limitation on your implementation of a particular type of utility in the town.
Well, I'm not talking a growth moratorium. The moratorium on water connections, you can call it a growth moratorium, but it's a moratorium on connections to water or sewer. And I believe the state requires you to look at that annually. You can adopt the moratorium, even the state moratorium. It's reviewed at the end of the year.
Well,
my understanding.
I'm not. The only statutes I'm familiar with are 674, 22, and 23, which require a 1-year examination of a growth management adopted under the land use statutes. If you're talking about a different ordinance under a different set of enabling acts, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
But people, if they can find us, they have a provision right here in 2A. If they go out and find the town a new supply, they can hook up. So there, you're putting it on the developer's shoulder.
Councilor Hart?
I'd like to make a motion to send this to legal review, and then, once that opinion's received, to a public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion, Councilor Hart, second, Brian Morrison. I just have clarification. Shouldn't there be a date for the public hearing?
I wouldn't.
I know, that's...
But it's the first available
Okay.
Business meeting. Or I don't care if it's at a workshop, but it probably makes sense for because I just don't see FX doing it
right
by a certain date.
Okay.
That'd be nice, but...
I've got opinions I'm waiting for.
Any more discussion? Jen?
Do we really want to spend more money on legal?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
This one,
When
we're
we
gonna
have
get
someone
sued if
that-
we don't implement it correctly.
But haven't we? Okay.
Oh, sorry, you were gonna ask if it's
Nope.
already gone there? Hasn't gone there? I mean, traditionally, we do get all ordinances reviewed, especially planning ones.
Would that be by FX or the planning?
Well,
FX, okay.
McNeil Taylor.
Okay.
I support legal review in this case. This is the first time any type of ordinance like this has been adopted in the state. So it's,
Oregon is the.
it's going to need
It's going to
some,
be on the map.
yeah, and I wanted you to see this so you know we've been working on it, and also so you know what's coming, because we really are, I spent a lot of time thinking about, and I can think of no other way that addresses all these issues this way.
Counselor Jarvis?
So you're suggesting that the town council's attorney do a legal review of this, when I thought the planning board already had a legal review of this? No?
No.
Okay. So you're sending it to the planning board for legal review?
No, I said it's the town's council, the town's legal counsel, which is, that's what my intent was, Malcolm
Okay.
McNeil's office.
Generally, we're a little bit ahead of ourselves. We generally require, or have in the past, legal review come with the ordinance from the planning board.
Okay.
This is pretty
Yep.
complicated one.
Yep.
Administrator Dixon, can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Counselor Morrison.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Glennon, oh, excuse me, Counselor Jarvis.
Aye.
Counselor Hamel, Jerry Hamel. Counselor Capriola.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay. Item number 16, discussion on water ban. That,
We just did that.
pretty much. Based, I think Dana had brought that up at the last meeting, because the wells were in good shape, and just so you know, George gave me a little thing. In the last month, we've noticed that the gallons usage has gone from 214,000 a day to 297,000 a day. As it got drier, we noticed more usage.
Yep.
What's wrong with you people?
Stage 4 is, no outside water use. Based on everything we've talked about tonight, I don't know how you guys feel. If you want to drop it down to a stage 3, I personally don't think that's a good idea, even though we're in good shape. I think we need to maintain that, and I think that you will see a drastic change in usage if we go to a stage 3. That's my opinion. We've seen that. George can support me on that. Now, we've seen it happen.
I agree.
Yep. Counselor Hart?
And then I think we have to start enforcing it, because I've seen a lot of people in my neighborhood. There's the house that just got rebuilt. They put a lawn in and they started sprinkling it, and it's like, I mean, it's not fair. The fairness issue is the problem there. I understand, they just built a house and they want to have a lawn. I understand that, but there's people like the Jablonskis that have an awesome vegetable garden, and it's definitely not doing as well as it could be. The perennials that were planted in my yard aren't doing so well. So, I've been bringing, as I said, I brought water from the dehumidifier in the basement out to the garden to try to survive, get them to survive. So, have we issued any warnings or tickets?
We have issued some warnings, I believe.
I don't know if the police department has, but when our people are reading water meters, or if they're driving around and they see anything, they do stop, and they either talk to the person and give them a brochure, or they leave a brochure in their door.
I just think we need to make sure that's still happening, and maybe make sure people know it's still on, because it's not fair to the people that are following it.
I agree. Counselor Jarvis?
Just, Brian, there have been a few people that have told me that the police have come to their house.
Oh, wow.
Because they were, their neighbors said that they were watering, or they were making sure that they had a pump to actually get water from the river to do their lawn
yeah.
instead of, so the police have been out there.
That's good.
Talking to a few people.
Thank
I
you,
don't know if
Jen.
they actually issued tickets, but they've definitely given warnings.
Yeah.
People power washing their houses and things like that.
Yep.
And I have approved permission on a power wash downtown on a business building. So there's been cases where I have specifically approved a specific request.
Counselor Morrison?
Is it okay to make a motion at this stage?
I don't think, this was just a discussion, so if we just kind of
I just think we should leave it at stage 4.
do a straw poll, or do you think it should be a motion to leave it at stage?
Just skip over it. You had your discussion, consensus, it stays.
Okay. Yeah. Update on aquifer delineation, inventory, and evaluation RFP.
Okay.
You doing that, George? Okay.
Oh my God, it's the last one.
Several years ago, I think in the late 90s, we did a delineation of the aquifer to find out where it is, mostly for zoning up in the Plains area. And that report was never accepted by the state of New Hampshire, DES. So we applied and got a grant for $12,500, and we sent out RFPs to revisit this and do the required testing and sampling that the state required to see if we could define that delineation and get it approved by the state. And we had 4 bidders, and I'm recommending that we give this job to the Comprehensive Environmental Incorporated. And I prepared a little spreadsheet trying to, this was done on qualifications only because we already knew what the money cost was. And I did kind of a spreadsheet and read all the tasks and how they were going to approach them and came up with that recommendation. It's actually $12,500 in grant and $3,000 of our funds from the water department to cover this.
So are you looking for a vote to go ahead?
I'm just
We need to
looking
do
for
that in a
A vote to
resolution?
award.
a vote to select,
To award it?
to award the selection.
Is this also going to look into the lead issue?
Yes.
It's in there as one of the components.
Why was the last, oh, may I ask a question?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Why was the last report not accepted?
Well, there was parts of the delineated area that the state didn't feel we did enough testing, putting in observation wells to check the water level and things like that.
So this will basically be building on top of that. We won't, the monitoring wells that are out there are still there.
They'll be using the existing monitoring wells and putting in a couple additional wells.
That's good. I'll make a motion if we're ready. I make a motion to accept the recommendation of the water department to contract with CEI. That's the right one, right? CEI? Yeah.
Yep.
For the aquifer delineation, inventory, and evaluation.
Okay, motion, Counselor Hart, second, Counselor Jarvis. Is there any discussion? Can you please call the roll?
Counselor Hart?
Aye.
Counselor Morrison?
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis?
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Caprioli?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We have two other things to talk about under other business, which is not listed on the agenda, but we need to give the council at least an update on Pollock's Brook, and we need to appoint CIP. Is that correct, members?
Yeah, and
That
I
have been
believe-
recommended.
Yeah, and I believe you have received this, it was in
Yep.
your box. Okay.
So we can do CIP first, since that's, go for it.
I make a motion to accept the recommendations of the Planning Board and Budget Committee for representatives to the CIP, Leo Fillion from the Planning Board and Robert Prine as the alternate, Bill Harless from the Budget Committee, and Rod Bowles as the alternate.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Al, you say we get that in our box?
Pardon me?
We have that in our box?
Yes, it should have been put in the box on either the morning of the afternoon of the 15th or the morning of the
Monday,
16th. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you please call the roll?
Sure.
Sorry.
Counselor Morrison? Aye. Counselor Hart?
Aye.
Counselor Morrison?
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis?
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Catherine Ray?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The other thing is, Leo, can you kind of inform the council of where we stand with the sand bed filter in Falls Brook in a minute and a half?
One question, I thought you were going to appoint the whole committee tonight.
The what?
I thought you were going to appoint the whole CIP committee tonight.
Yes, you need to, the only other individual you need to appoint, because the rest are standing members of the staff, is a town council member.
We did, Brian Morrison, last meeting.
I think we said we'd do it all in one motion.
You do it all at once, you didn't do it.
Motion post.
Well, I can't second it then. Or can I?
Yeah, you got a big conflict.
Any more money.
That's right, you never did pay me anything.
So if we can, if that's okay with everybody, that's all.
Okay.
I suggest that we do that.
All right.
So it's, that
Friendly
motion is a
opposed
friendly
to
amendment. Friendly amendment for Counselor Morrison.
So is my understanding that Clay Mitchell and Melody,
Standing.
Finance director and the town planner are standing members of the staff.
Okay. Leo, can you give the council a quick update on Falls Brook and?
I was going golfing all day. I understand many developments took place today, which I am not aware of, and maybe Mr. Dixon would be more up to date than I am.
You think I should?
No.
Okay. I have had a couple of discussions today with Mary Courier. We have a meeting, if you check tomorrow morning, I don't recall, I believe it's on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock.
That's till Tuesday. Thursday?
Well, check with Kathy, she takes care of the calendar, okay? But we haven't, we planned a meeting with you, George Laney, and myself, and Mary Courier.
Tomorrow?
Can we figure out when the meeting is after?
Check with Kathy in the morning, okay?
All right, let's just worry about that later.
And that meeting is going to be to discuss the strategy with which we approach some of the decision makers
Do
within
you
the
guys know what
Department
he's
of
talking about?
Environmental Protection.
Did you see the letter
You all saw the letter, I
We got
assume.
the final copy today.
from DES?
If you got the, I didn't see the final copy. If it came in
Basically.
It's the same thing.
Okay, basically what's happening is that there was some reservations, and I'm trying to think of the exact words, but pretty much the sand filter bed, as I understand the letter, cannot be approved as
As a
maintenance
maintenance.
program as it is designed at this point in time.
Yeah, and there were...
And I guess what happened was Mary Courier and Jerry Langdon, is that it? Lang, went into designing this, trying to follow the regulations and guidance from someone or the powers that be up at Frank Richardson at DES. And then what happened is, I guess other groups came in and questioned whether or not sustainable yield would be an issue, and felt that it would be, so. But we can still go ahead with drilling the wells. That's still a viable option, and we are doing that. They're sometime after August 30th, or on August 30th, they're gonna start.
The week of the 29th.
A week from the the week of the 29th. Should take them, what, a week, just eight days to drill?
Probably. I don't know, a couple weeks maybe.
And then they'll give us a report, so probably around the third week in September. But I guess my concern as a counselor, or even a citizen, is that we really need to jump on finding a solution. This is just, we have to, I wasn't here for that meeting, but I think we need to have a discussion and relook at Wade Farm. I think, depending on what the wells show us in Fallsbrook, I think we need to do study. I think we really need to make a list of every option out there. Pennachuck's another one I think we need to consider strongly, but I don't think we can still 2 years from now be looking for a water solution. I think we need to be making the solution work. We can't do this anymore. We have to have a solution.
The essence of the letter, in effect, is they are going to require a great deal more study to utilize the Falls Brook bed. Those studies will be expensive, and at the end, you don't know if you can get approval. So we're going to try to coordinate a meeting, decide who's going to be involved in that meeting from the state level, and have it here in Newmarket, and try to resolve some issues and see if we were to do all these tests, is there some light at the end of the rainbow where, when we get done, that we can actually do this, that we can actually get it approved, or are we just going to be doing these studies and paying out this money, and in the end, approval is not going to be had? And that's a concern right now, Mary, and certainly a concern of mine. I think it was a concern of George as we talked that day and met down at the Falls Brook area. So
I think we have to be very cautious and very wise about that money, because we don't have an answer yet, but an answer may be a $20 million plant, and the people who are going to pay for that are your users. So I think we just have to be careful about how we spend it while we're looking for solutions.
Yeah. So right now, we're going to be meeting to put together a strategy to approach the decision makers to see what we can do